this meeting to order at 7 o'clock p.m. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. Roll call.
Commissioner Davis?
Present.
Vice Chair Biani?
Here.
Chair Tombe?
Here.
Commissioner Stanek?
Here.
Commissioner Wilson?
Here.
Excellent. So before we get started, I'd like to remind those who are in the audience, if you would like to make a comment on something that is not in the agenda. Again, if you would like to make a comment on something that is not in the agenda, we have blue forms up to the right over here. You may fill that out and you have 3 minutes to speak to the commission. Seeing that we actually have an oral communication regarding the approval of minutes, I'm going to pull that agenda item and place it before the approval of minutes itself. Again, if you would like to speak on something that is not in the agenda, please fill out a blue card that is up to the right over here. First up, we have Kitty Moore, who would like to speak regarding the minutes.
Okay. Good evening. Okay, so I was looking at the minutes from the 24th. And there was a really long discussion about the Brown Act, and I don't see any mention of that. And I think it should be in here because it took up a good bit of time, and there was a statement made that kind of implied that the other commissions weren't following the Brown Act. And this statement was, it seems like the other commissions don't follow the Brown Act anyway, and I think that that's significant. And the other issue was Linda Vista Park and the property being donated, and that was mentioned by the head of the department, Milkies, and one of the people in the audience was aware of this purchase, and I would like that interchange of information to be added as well. Thank you.
All right, great. Next up, we have Lisa Warren.
Thank you. So I just want to make a correction to the minutes about what I was reported as saying. I didn't, it says questions what the change is from a commission to a committee, which is true. I did question what that was and what the necessity of that would be, which everyone was rounding about that it was Brown Act stuff, which again, Kitty mentioned wasn't mentioned, but anyway. And what it says I said is, and what savings could result from the switch. My comment about the commission and the committee, I don't believe had anything to do with them financial. So that can just be taken out if you don't mind. And I also did not say that there would be no chance for residents to voice their concerns. I said there would be less of a chance for residents to volunteer and participate.
Excuse me, can you please specify the page or section under which that is happening?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. It's page 2 of the draft. Paragraph, the 4th paragraph down starts with my name.
Did you get the first part of that? I didn't hear the first part. If you could just say it again closer to the microphone, that would be helpful. Thanks.
The first part connected to what I said? Yes. Okay, so it just says, and I'm not saying, it could have been construed this way. It couldn't have been construed that way because I didn't say that. I just want to make it clear because when you're quoting someone, it's nice for them to feel like it's being done correctly. More than halfway into that paragraph, questioned what the change is from a commission to a committee and what savings could result. Really, I didn't tie money into that question. My question was, what is the benefit and why would you do it? Because all the discussion was about the difference was, it appeared to me before I left the meeting, was just about Brown Act limitations, and there were a lot of comments about, well, it would be nice if they were just committees because then they wouldn't have to follow the Brown Act, which we know now is not the case. Anyway, and then the last sentence, if there are no more commissions, then there's no chance for residents to voice their concerns. I never would have said that. And I know it's recorded, so I can go back and look, but what I likely said, what I remember saying was there would be a limited amount, and we're increasing. We all know eventually we're going to have an increased population, and that it seems a shame to decrease the volunteer opportunities when you're increasing the population.
Thank you. All right, we have one more. However, it's related to our Parks and Rec master plan. So, Lola, I'm going to hold off on your request to speak until that agenda item. All right, now going into approval of minutes. Since we have a couple of potential addendums, I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the June 7th meeting.
So moved.
A second?
Seconded.
All right, we can take it to a vote. Great, and the motion passes. Meeting minutes for June 7th have been approved. All right, now looking for a motion to approve the July 24th meeting.
Question, can we approve it with the amendments as Kevin will then?
You can
Okay,
make
so
that
I approve
motion.
it with the amendments that Kevin will add to this.
I second that. Can we have a discussion?
Yeah, we can go into
Yeah,
a discussion.
okay.
That's fine. We don't have to go straight to a vote. All right, now we'll move into a discussion. Commissioners, do you have anything to discuss regarding the amendments?
I'd like to hear exactly what it is
Yeah,
that,
me too.
what the words are that we'd be amending.
Yes, agreed.
Or what you're, yeah.
Can we table them and bring them back next month? Or-
Or we could
I don't think so.
approve,
It's,
we could
it's up
vote
to
as
us.
amended.
So if you guys are comfortable with adding, Kevin can tell us what the verbiage will be added. We can add it. Otherwise, we can table this until the next meeting.
I don't know.
So actually, I have a question, Kevin. When you recorded these minutes and the feedback we got that there was different way it is interpreted, is that how you record it? I mean, do you have more recording? Because I'm sure you have summarized what you heard. Do they match with what were you recording?
Do you mean the comments that we heard today?
Yeah.
To my memory, I believe so, but
Okay.
I wouldn't be 100%
Okay, just wanted
sure.
to make sure that when you were recording because it could be interpretation is.
That's what I was
Yeah.
going to say.
Yeah. I mean, I have a comment on that,
Yeah, go ahead.
on
Go
the
ahead.
feedback.
We're in
If-
discussion.
Okay. On the piece about the Brown Act, I don't remember anyone saying that they didn't think that the other commissions were following the Brown Act. I think there was a lot of discussion about, I mean, it was part of brainstorming. It was a study session. It was a study session and throwing out ideas and questioning, would there be a possibility, what would be the requirements of a committee? And the Brown Act was one of the questions. I don't think it was a suggestion. And I don't think, I don't remember anyone suggesting that other commissions were not following the Brown Act. So, I mean, there was some discussion that other commissions handle their meetings differently. In a more informal, informal sense, but not that it wasn't Brown Act, compliant.
My understanding was the Brown Act came into when we asked the question whether it's a committee or a commission and how it would differ. Would they be part of Brown Act or not?
And I don't think it was a recommendation. It was some brainstorming.
Yeah, and minutes really record more actions and things like that. Minutes don't record every single little word that is uttered. I think if there was a decision or a motion, it would be important to include that, but I agree with you. It was more of a discussion and a study session.
Given that we did have conversation on the Brown Act, I'm comfortable adding a line stating to that effect.
That we had a
the Brown Act,
conversation.
that we had a conversation around
yeah.
the Brown Act and what it entails for other commissions, if those commissions were turned into committees.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That I
that
would-
definitely
I
I
would agree
agree.
on.
Yeah.
Especially since when we were talking, we were under the impression that those Brown Act rules would not apply to a committee, and seeing that that is not the case, it's important that we note that.
Okay, so far, I just want to make sure. So the change, so the addition of the line about the Brown Act, like you said, that the subject was discussed and how it applies to the other committees, right? Was the
Commissions and what
Versus
happens
committees.
versus
If it was
committees.
turned, commissions became committees.
Yeah.
But there was no, motion
Doubt,
or recommendation or anything. It was a discussion.
And then the second part, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I didn't catch this part, in regards to Linda Vista Park, I did not hear the rest of that addition. Sorry, or she mentioned something about
It was
Linda Vista
something
Park.
that-
I think the concern was, Kevin, Jeff Milkus, Director, Recreation Community Services. I think the concern was about the discussion of the proposed donation of land that would Hall Road Trail that would link up Linda Vista to McClellan Road, and that the concern was I suppose, or the comment was that the information may have already been in the public, kind of out in the public at that point, or even before I said anything, that at least one commissioner knew about it in advance.
That should, I believe that should also be added to the minutes.
Okay.
And that was part of when we were discussing the work plan.
That was a work plan discussion,
Okay.
to be discussed.
Okay, and then the other change was to remove the part that says where she had said that the switch about the savings in,
Lisa Warren did
yes, did not mention
savings.
savings. Yes. Okay.
I think she specifically said the question what the benefits rather than changes for the commission to be. Is that?
Okay. And then the other change was that changing the commissions to the committees, that eliminating the commissions would not give an opportunity at all for them. It would just lessen.
It would reduce.
It would
Limit the
reduce how
amount,
much opportunity. Yes. Okay.
That was
so
the
that's
final
what I got.
change.
Yes, that's what I got so far.
Can you do a once-over on this? You don't have to go into the exact verbiage, but just line item what those were.
Okay, so it's to add on the Brown Act discussion, to add on the discussion about Linda Vista Park that happened, right? The Hall Road, the trail. To remove the section that mentioned about the cost savings, because that was not mentioned. And then to finally say that it would only reduce the ability for citizens to voice their concerns and not eliminate it completely. Or volunteer. To volunteer, sorry.
Okay. Anything else from the commission? Otherwise, we'll move it to a vote.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin.
All right, great. Well, we can go ahead and move to a vote on this. Again, you're voting on the approval of the minutes as amended.
Oh, not yet. Oh, sorry.
Anybody home?
Yeah, it's not working.
All right, we can do a verbal vote while we're working on that. We'll go down the line. If you approve, say yes. If you disapprove, say no. And if you abstain, you may say so.
I'll go first.
Me?
I'm thinking.
Go ahead.
Oh, yes.
Yes?
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. And with that, the minutes have been approved with the aforementioned 4 amendments. All right. Now we can go ahead and go to the ceremonial matters and presentations. The first one up is the Valco specific plan presentation. And if you could also just introduce yourself and state your name for the record, please. For those of you who are in the audience, if you would like to speak on the Valco plan, the Valco presentation, please fill out a blue card. Once the presentation is over, that is your opportunity to say something to the commission. Once the commission moves into a discussion, you will not be able to say something to the commission directly. So please fill out the blue card. We would love to hear from you. All right, thank you.
Okay, before we start, just a reminder that this was a request, and so we're bringing this to you. This is a fairly technical presentation, I think, and it's something that is been presented, I think, to City Council, but it's kind of a, I don't want to say abbreviated version, but the intention is just to provide you kind of an overview of the specific. But I just want to caution us that this isn't necessarily the plan that'll come out and things like that. These are kind of, well, she'll explain it. Okay.
All right. Thank you, commissioners, and our director here for inviting me to this meeting. My name is Katarina Kidd. I'm senior planner in the Community Development Department. I'm the project planner for the Valco specific plan. And tonight's presentation is just as Mr. Milkus had described. It is a shorter version of what we presented at City Council study session on June 4th, 2018. So I do have a reference to at the end of the presentation where you can find more information. And certainly, if you'd like to delve deeper, there's plenty of materials to delve into. So I'll do my best just to really give an overview and really more of a conversational style presentation of the meeting, or of the materials of where we are so far. So, as you all are all aware, we have a specific plan process ongoing right now. In the spring, in April and May, we had 2 charrettes, which is basically open studio, open house, and presentation time for this plan. And the approach we used was really to invite the community to, we refer to it as almost like an open kitchen style of watching how plans unfold. We understand this project had a lot of history, and you're all aware of all that. But our goal really was to press the reset button and say, let's just come back and start over, understanding that there are a lot of opinions and a lot of ideas as to how this should go. But we just wanted to, in that sense, as far as having these multi-day open studio sessions and Q&A opportunities, to really just reset the button and try to get everyone to almost like a roundtable style discussion. So over the course of 9 charrette days, we had started in April with our design team explaining, or looking at different frameworks. How do you even come up with a plan? In some cases, it seems like it magically appears, and it doesn't make sense as to why or how we got there. And our goal was really to break that up into to the ingredients, street networks, preferred scales of buildings, park locations, those type of things, and where housing should go, where office should go, what are the different options or alternatives, and people had strong feelings about different land uses and things like that. So it was really an opportunity for people to have those conversations and have a more visually oriented conversation. So if you look at some of these pictures in the slide, they're images and boards that basically think of it like the ingredients, looking through all the different ingredients and how those plan elements come together. So that was really the goal of those exercises. And these images you see are just modeling. It's not the design. It's essentially what it comes down to. I think this list here kind of summarizes it fairly well on the right-hand side. Think of it as nothing more complicated, or maybe just as complicated as writing code. When you're writing a zoning code or a municipal code, you look at that and say, well, how did this even come together? Are we picking numbers out of the air? And the answer for that should be no. That there was a lot of studying, a lot of modeling, a lot of capacity that happens to analyze, do we have capacity for these type of numbers, and what does that look like? What does that mean? And so that's what the exercise was. And the list on the right-hand side kind of shows the different categories of things that the city is looking to have on the books, our own objective standards as to what applies to this 50-plus acre plan area. Okay, so think of it as a visual version. A specific plan is a visual version of zoning code. Probably the easiest way to write code is just write text. You've probably seen those books where it's a fat book with just a lot of words, a lot of numbers, and there's nothing to really go with it. And over time, our staff ends up creating, we have a lot of handouts, things like that for even, say, single family, right? People come in and say, what can I do on my property? Well, over time, over the years, our staff has developed different handouts and descriptions explaining to people, here's what you can do with your home. Here's how you remodel. Well, in the ideal world, that would have already been part and parcel with the zoning code, right? So you'd have those images together to explain and make it very easy for the user to understand what it is you're regulating and what that looks like. So a specific plan is trying to do that, exactly. It's not designing the project, it's setting the parameters. Again, establishing program parameters. We are studying ways to regulate patterns that would make a more user-friendly, vibrant environment and provide a lot of flexibility for owners, present and future, for this property, and understanding over long term that the ownership may change. And here's just a quick slide that says, regulations will look similar to this. We want to have, again, instead of in 5 years, our staff having to come up with a handout that explains our code, we want it to be part of the regulations, that it should explain itself, right? And it would look something similar to this, where we have some diagrams, some easy to reference how we organized all the regulations. And I'd just like to conclude, if you'd like to take a look at more information, we have a project website, envisionvalco.org. We're working right now on getting a draft out for the public to look at, toward the end of the month. We hope in the fall to be in front of the Planning Commission, and prior to that, the draft will be available for everybody to look at on our project website. Also, the Cupertino city website, we'll post it in 2 places. And lastly, as I mentioned before, all the presentations were recorded. So if you wanted to delve more, there's actually a 40-slide version of what I showed you tonight. It was a bit long, I think, for tonight's purposes, but that presentation's available on both websites if you'd like to take a look at more. Thank you for your attention.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Commissioners, do we have any clarifying questions before we jump into a discussion? No? Great. Kevin, do we have any blue cards on this topic? Excellent. We have 2 requests to speak. First, we have Kitty Moore.
Good evening. So the Valco specific plan was actually based on SB 35, and it was not a start over or reset. Valco SB 35 is 10.4 million square feet, 1.81 million square feet of office. What is it, 2001 or 2? I'm not really sure. 2,402 residential units, 400,000 square feet of retail. And then when they did their EIR, I'm going to try this, see if it works. It works well enough. Okay, so the real bright spot there is your proposed project. So from the general plan, and the specific plan is supposed to follow the general plan by law, otherwise you would need to have a general plan amendment. But in the general plan, you have a minimum 600,000 square feet of, they're saying commercial retail, 2 million square feet office allocation, which expired May 31st and was supposed to have hearings about continuing it. You have 339 hotel rooms. A large portion of that is already nearly finished at the Hyatt House. The residential units allocation is actually 389. But they have 800 here. I guess they would get a conditional use permit. There is no civic space in the general plan mentioned, and there is no green roof mentioned, so that's something added. And then the project alternatives are supposed to then attain the same sort of similar objectives as the proposed project. However, these project alternatives seem to have veered quite a bit. You have one, the 600,000 commercial, 1 million square feet office, and now you've got, you've increased your hotel, kept the hotel rooms, but increased your residential units to the 2640. You've got a retail and residential alternative, 600,000 square feet retail, and 4,000 dwelling units. And then you have to have a no project alternative for the EIR, which they studied, but you have to. They're showing an occupied retenanted mall, and that's actually a different project. So you have to look at what's there now and study that, and this was actually an addition. And then they're calling this new one in there, they sent out a new amended EIR to look at, and that they call it housing rich, but actually it's got 1.5 million square feet of office, so I think it should be renamed. Again, 600,000 square feet commercial and 3,250 residential dwelling units. When the charrettes ended, okay, thank you.
We are out of time. And I'd like to request that members of the audience please respect the person speaking at the podium and keep the talking to outside of these chambers. If you would like to speak on the Valco topic, please go ahead and fill out a blue card available up at the front to the right. Next up, we have Pam Hershey. And please state your name for the record as well. Thank you.
Sure. My name is Pamela Hershey, and welcome, Commissioners. The first time I've been at Parks and Rec meeting. I was hoping that, as far as I understood, there was going to be more information about Valco. But when I asked my friends and some of the neighbors to come this evening, on the agenda, they did not see it on the website. So I guess it was under presentations. So they did not come. And when I called today, and I called the City Hall, and I spoke with Ms. Pugh myself, and she answered the phone, she said that Valco was not going to be discussed tonight. It was not on the agenda. So I was a little disappointed in that. I did speak to her, and she said it's a Parks and Rec meeting, and I said I thought it was about something was going on with Valco, and she said no. So a little disappointed, and I'm glad I came anyway because I got to see the presentation. So I think there was miscommunication, otherwise more people would have been here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Additional blue cards on this topic? We have one more on Valco. Danessa Tekmansky. And please state your name for the record.
Hi, my name's Danessa Tekmansky. I'm a 30-year Cupertino resident, native Californian. I know maybe you're not the right audience, but it's really been on my mind, and I wanted to talk to you. I have gone around and I have talked to residents that live next to Valco, knocked on their doors and asked them their concerns, how they felt, and it absolutely broke my heart. We had people shake our hands and invite us into their homes and bring us glasses of lemonade and ice water on silver trays and sit us down and bring their grandparents out and their children out to meet us because they thought that maybe we could help them. And one house in particular, it's on the street that's right next to Valco, and the trees are dying in that area. And we had to tell them that some of those buildings could be up to 22 or 23 stories high. And I sat there and looked. They had a beautiful vegetable garden, and the grandfather lived with them, and he was watering it. And I was just thinking what it's going to be like for all those families where you have, you know, moms and dads that have sacrificed everything to own a home here, now to be living next to that. I know Valco needs to be redeveloped, but I feel like it's destroying people's lives. It's destroying people's homes. It just seems so wrong to me. I don't know what can be done. We don't own the property, but I just don't understand how the interests of a developer and the people that work for him can take precedence over so many families that have given everything to live here and make this place their home. And I hope when you have the opportunity to make decisions that you'll think about that. So, thank you.
Thank you. All right, we have another blue card regarding the Valco presentation. Leanna Crabtree. Again, if you are in the audience and would like to make a comment to the commission regarding the Valco presentation that we just heard, you can fill out a blue card up at the front on the right-hand side. Go ahead.
Thank you for adjusting that. Kitty Moore had a few more things to say. I wanted to make sure that her points were recognized. So at the end of the Opticos process, we came out with two plans, the low office, high retail, and the low housing, low retail options. And there's a little glare spot, so let me move that over a little bit. So the residential units under the low office, high retail, 3,250, and a little bit fewer under the low housing, low retail at about 2,600. But according to those plans, the only parkland that they would be offering would be 5 acres of parkland. But according to the municipal code, with such large numbers of units, so many square feet, it really should be much closer to 30 acres of parkland. And just to be clear, you know, a parkland is on the ground. It's a place where you could play soccer or have a picnic or just stroll to, not need to take an elevator or a stairwell or something to get to it and find somebody with a key. So it's really important. I know, you know, there seems to be some interest in thinking that this tundra canopy is going to satisfy parkland, but it's not parkland, it's a roof. So please keep in mind that the east side is park starved, and we really do need to follow our laws to make sure that we get enough parkland throughout the city. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Kevin, any more blue cards on this topic? Wonderful. All right, we can move into discussion. Commissioners.
Sorry, I don't know what button it is. I'm not sure what there is to discuss. I think this was sort of informational to us also, and we don't have a vote or just, I think this was just informational to us.
There is no action to be taken on this item. However, if you have any questions or things you would like clarification on, either from public comment or of your own, you can ask those questions right now.
I think we're learning as
I think it was more of an update, right?
Yeah, an update.
I guess my one question is there going to be another charrette, or is that it?
No, that's the charrettes were in April
Charrette,
and
sorry.
May.
Okay, yeah, charrette.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think it will happen, but I just want to make sure that as this develops, that we get to hear more about what the 5 acres or however many acres, I think that's for me.
You're done, Carol.
What the park will consist of. And I'm sure that will come back to us, but I just want to make sure that it gets on our work plan when it's appropriate.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there was nothing to discuss because there was not enough depth in the presentation. There was just information. So we accept the presentation. Yeah, there's not to discuss anything here.
Thank you so much again for coming to make this presentation. For context for folks in the audience, during our work plan meeting, we wanted to update and wanted to get continued updates on what was happening with the Valco property as it relates to parks and recreation, as this is a large part of Cupertino's future. It would be, I did have a chance to look at that very, very long presentation deck, the 40 or 45 slide one. And as was mentioned before, it would be great to see what the build is for the parks before the final plan is made, for a couple of reasons. I think some of the other developments that have happened around the city have not been park-centric. They have not been community land-centric, and I think that has been a disappointment to a lot of community members, and that's a lot of where I think we're feeling that now, is a lot of community members see other developments that have happened without parks and recreation and the community being put first. So just making sure as y'all continue to make this plan that's taken into consideration. Excellent. With nothing else from the commissioners? All right, thank you so much for your presentation. Wonderful. We have no postponements, and there are no other oral communications on other topics. We will now move into old business. Old business, item number 4 is the Inclusive Playground Feasibility Study, Concept, and Plans. Take it away.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for having us. I'm Gail Seeds. I'm the Park Improvement Manager in the Recreation and Community Services Department. Here tonight with me is Corbin Schneider from Verity Design. We are delighted he is here tonight. He's going to be able to join me in this presentation and answer your questions and share the concepts that he and his firm have developed for potential inclusive play areas at Jollyman Park. This slide just highlights the 3 primary tasks that Verity was retained to assist us with. First, they were to identify and evaluate potential park sites that could host an inclusive play area. We brought those results forward to you in June with a portion of the report that was completed at that time. Their next task was to develop 2 sample plans for whatever sites were deemed worth further evaluation at whatever parks. And that is the task we're sharing with you tonight. And after this, should there be desire to move forward, there is time for Corbin and his team to assist us with preparing such a site to be suitable to attract outside funding, partnerships, and some communication tools. You'll recall from June that we evaluated park sites here in Cupertino. These were the criteria we used as a first sort for screening what sites could potentially host an inclusive play area. Such play areas do draw from beyond the city limits. They're very popular, and so with that thought in mind, we looked at what sites we have and what ones might work. We evaluated the 4 parks noted here. And shown on this map, you'll see that the 4 sites there's kind of north, south, east, and west locations as it happened. and we did a pretty thorough evaluation. We ranked using 38 different criteria. We quantified those criteria, and then we applied yet another screening, sorting for some highest priority considerations. And with that, the sites that rose to the top were two different locations, both at Jollyman Park, both along the west side, along the Stelling frontage. Both locations currently do have play areas. There is one play area in the northwest corner of Jollyman and one in the southwest corner. This map identifies them as Site A and Site B. That was the aerial graphic we brought to you last time. Those two sites were deemed the most potentially suitable. So Corbin and his team took a look at those two locations, and they have come up with some ideas for those sites to share with us. And I'm going to hand this over to Corbin because he is a wealth of information. I think you'll enjoy him. Here's Corbin.
Thank you, Gail. Thank you, Gail. First, I want to start off by saying when we first met and started this process, one of our charges was, yes, to consider and take a look at these 4 parks. And we started out with a small list, and the list kept growing as far as what we wanted to use as a screening and to be scoring these sites on. We wanted to make sure when we came to you that you had an opportunity to look at a lot of data that we went through on the scoring, and that we really looked at every aspect of the parks, not just what they were at present, but how this type of use would fit and how it be integrated into the existing uses, the neighborhoods, the city's dreams and goals for their parks. And one of the terms or the things that was said to us as a consultant was, there's a number of these parks being built and being designed now. We want Cupertinos to be unique. We will probably find that some of the play equipment is similar or to other all-inclusive playgrounds, but we want Cupertinos to be unique. So when we went into this, we started looking at the sites, and the 4 sites that you looked at, you saw the names of that we went through. They're all unique, and they have great potential, and they all were scored. And when these came up, what's interesting is they're both at the same park. And we went through a lot of deliberation and looking at other highly potential sites, but when we looked at the size, and if you noted on one of the slides it said 0.6 to 1 acre, we really started taking a look at what Cupertino was looking for, and that 0.6 really kind of ebbed up to more around a 0.8 to 0.83 to 1 acre, and maybe even a little bit above. And these sites were actually increased in size a little bit to get up closer to that 1 acre size, so that if the city of Cupertino moves forward with an all-inclusive playground, you maximize your potential. The public, the people from outside, the local public, would be able to come to an all-inclusive playground that would truly meet the needs of both the local community and anybody who came to visit, both in the experience and in the room that was available made for this kind of a feature.
And I'll just chime in and remind folks that this is a feasibility study. This is not proposed as we should or must build this. It's to inspire our thinking and to have us think about how a site could accommodate the kind of play area we might want to have.
So when we looked at these two, if you're familiar with Jollyman, the upper Site A is pretty flat. When you go out there, there's a kind of a circular motion to the existing play area and the picnic benches. The lower Site B, actually has a depressed area down. There's no cursor. Can I just?
You want me to go forward to A?
Sure.
Go back?
Well, I was just, okay. Looking at A, this is the northern concept. And what these are is concepts. That's what we're here to do, is to provide something that shows you some circulation, shape, size, entrances, and the different zones, as we call them, for the different activities. This is close to the parking lot, which is to the right-hand side of the graphic.
Yeah, I'm going to chime in, and actually this one graphic north is to the left. The next graphic north is
right.
Up. And this one we oriented because it's a little bit longer and skinnier, so it might be a little hard to follow. Stelling and the is actually off the bottom of the page. So this one, if you can kind of think sideways, I'll go back to the, it takes this one in the upper left and rotates it 90 degrees. So we could show you all the features just a little bit bigger.
And so looking at the site, one of the main attributes to both of these sites is the location of the parking. So it's relatively close and accessible to the chosen areas. As well, there's mature trees. So it's really fantastic area for these type of activities. One thing that always rises to the top is shade. So you've got shade trees here. You'll notice there's a number of shade structures in here. Very attentive to kids coming for a long time play, not just for 15, 20 minutes. They may be here for a couple hours. Make it a safe place. Make it an accessible place. You'll notice also there's a number of picnic areas around for families to come, whether there's 2 or 3, 5. It could be larger for like a birthday party or something where there'd be a group gathering. But in both of these designs, you're going to notice there's zones, and each of those zones kind of concentrate around certain play. What we find is that when kids go to a spinning zone and you create different types of spinning activities, they're there for that specific type of thing, and you can kind of concentrate the movement and the type of activity so that you don't have a lot of cross play and kids getting hurt going from different type of apparatus to apparatus. Also a fun feature in both of these, you're going to notice up the upper right hand corner is the main entry, and the little spiral there is just a graphic, but one of the ideas is that would be a really cool poem, and it would be like inset into the concrete like copper letters or something, and brass letters, and it would wind around, and people would look through that and kind of see something really cool to make them think, about themselves and about, it could be being an inclusiveness. And one thing I want to point out, are you familiar with the term all-inclusive versus inclusive? You know the difference?
Please clarify.
Only because I actually had somebody ask me this week, what is the difference between inclusive and all-inclusive? An inclusive park, and there's many out there, it truly means that somebody can go out there in a wheelchair or whatever, and they can literally use an all ADA compliant and accessible park. All-inclusive means that those people who are disadvantaged can be in these kind of a park, in the kind of a playground, and use it next to and with people that are not disabled. So literally, we'll show you some pictures of some of the features. They can be side by side and hand in hand with people who are not disabled and enjoy it and feel like they're part of the overall community. And it's just a wonderful way to step up and ramp up what you would say, well, yeah, I've been to a park and they have transfer stations on some of the play equipment. This goes beyond that. So every feature is accessible to everybody, all ages, all abilities. I think that's something that's important. But if you look at the main entry, and you'll notice there's a sweeping S curve in there, and that's literally a ramp that's all ADA accessible. It's not a ramp in the term of I use the word ramp, but it's not a ramp, it's a change in elevation. In other words, it's sloped slowly enough that you could go very easily up in a wheelchair. It's not something you'd have to work up or you'd have to be pushed up into. And it winds around over to a bridge. And those bridges, we like to put in a little sway bridge, a little bit of movement and action for the people in a wheelchair. It's kind of fun. And then it gets you over into a higher area where there's slides of different types that come down, so they can pick and choose what kind of excitement or experience do I want to have at that time. Again, we have kids and adults that may have a higher level of ability. And you'll notice the blue there, and there's a little leader that goes to it, and it says climbing zone. Areas where people have the ability to grab onto something or climb up on a little slope and experience it, and maybe it's building up some muscle, tone or something in the torso or whatever, giving them a chance to experience something that maybe they can't do at home or in their local park. But I don't want to go through each one of these because there's a number of things that happen through here, but you'll notice that the dots and the arrows are showing circulation through it, easy accessible circulation through the entire playground area. Each of these playground concepts are fenced, so it's secure. You'll notice this is by Stellman, and there is a little landscape area between the sidewalk and Stellman, but once you're in here, what we want the parents to have the ability to do at times is to park a wheelchair, park a stroller, have their kids either be with them or be in an observation area and have the ability to kind of play on their own, experience on their own, maybe with a friend, but have their parents have the ability to observe and make sure everything's safe and everything's going well. So that's worked into the little areas around and throughout the entire park. One of the features you'll notice on both of these, there's a playhouse. If you're familiar, and you'll see a picture in a little bit, if you're familiar with Palo Alto, that is, if you know the woman who designed that and built it, it's a family-run company, and it's just a lot of fun. Looking at something that gives kids the outside experience, and then they can go inside, and there's fun things inside of it. So it's maybe somewhere they slow down, and maybe it's not so much action, but they can slow down and really experience a place with a couple friends in some of the rooms, or in this case on the second floor, or no, on the next version you'll see it on the second floor. Just a real fun place to get a different type of activity. And again, as we talk, something unique, something that is designed to be Cupertino. What would that look like? We're working on one right now in Morgan Hill, and it's a Tom Sawyer look. They want something that is Morgan Hill. And so something that's fun. When you go to this park, you go, wow, that looks fun. And sometimes if it's a certain theme, and we try to theme these parks, the kids don't look at this as the Cupertino all-inclusive playground. They look at it as the Tom Sawyer Park or the dinosaur park. And the parents go, I know what he's talking about. I know what she's talking about. We're going back because they enjoy it so much. So that kind of gives you an overview of what we look at when we design these. So the second one is a little bit different in that the lower area, the area to the lower left, that circular ramp that goes up has a couple lookouts on it. The area where the arrow goes into that little green area that says play zone, that's a little depressed area naturally right now, which really gives us the ability to use the existing change in elevation to create a situation where as you go up the ramp, you'll notice there's a playhouse up there. If it's a two-story playhouse, you get to go up the ramp and you have a choice. Do I go in the second story of the playhouse and do something fun in there, or do I continue and go onto the slide and climbing zone area and experience the change in elevation of going down a roller slide or a steel slide or something and having fun there? But each of these are designed so that the children can get up very easily, and then the parent or the guardian or a friend can go back down there, whether it be a wheelchair or whatever, and then give them the ability to kind of do a loop and keep playing it and having fun over and over again and experiencing different things. You're looking at the colors. We do like color, and not necessarily a lot of busy color. Big panels of solid color, it tends to calm people down and calm them down. And when they see that, they know, oh, the purple area is for the sound, or there's for the tot area, or it's for the spinner area. They can associate that with specific areas and specific activities. If you look over to the right-hand side, there's another playhouse shown. That's just showing, not that there's two of them in the park, but there's an ability to put one in there. And if you're familiar with this part of the site where the existing basketball court is, there's a lot of trees around there. So now you're kind of in a forest. And it could be a real fun area. I'm not saying necessarily Robin Hood, but there could be that theme area with the redwood trees, and it could be just a real fun way to integrate both the existing conditions and the proposed.
Yeah, I'll just add that Verity actually went to the trouble to identify every tree, and we sent them our tree GIS data, size, diameter, and these proposals are oriented around protecting the root systems of the mature trees so that we wouldn't lose any trees. So they've already thought that through in these. They've gone to that level of detail, a little bit above and beyond. So we've got some beautiful old trees out there, the beautiful redwoods and so on, that we're anxious to keep them healthy and have them age in place.
One thing I haven't mentioned in both of these, there's a stage, a platform, a flatter area where people can come and play music or do a little skit or do whatever. Or schools can even come and make it like a little open classroom type area when you've got seating out there. It could be anything. It could be a city run and somebody could lease it and come out and have a scheduled performance there, or a school could come out with city permission and could do nature talks and things like that. And you have an area here, this one, it's amongst the redwood trees, and your backdrop is the playhouse, kind of creating different uses for different people for different reasons. So we tried to really maximize the use of the space and the different activities. So if you've been to Palo Alto, you're gonna notice the very first slide. That Big O swing is like, we do a lot of public outreach, and literally for an all-inclusive playground, it takes 2 or 3 meetings to really get it all going. And I guarantee you, when you get to that phase here, you have a big room, because you're going to get more people having more fun. We've done a lot of work with schools that either have a large contingent of disabled children, and we've also worked with schools that are completely with disabled kids of all different types of needs. And a lot of what we come up with is based on a lot of the research we've done. And that Big O swing is like #1. But we're just going to show you 4 slides, that show you certain things, certain apparatus for those areas. The welcome chair, the wheelchair swing is, what's interesting about those, there's like 5 different types, and they're typically made, I don't know why, outside the United States. But they're a big feature because kids want to swing, and kids in a wheelchair don't have the opportunity to swing unless you transfer out of it. But to be able to take your wheelchair, roll it back in there, and swing is fantastic, and it's a really big feature. So the spinner zone, quite often what happens in these zones, you have the kids, whether it be the lower left hand where the wheelchair actually gets on the little spinner, the carousel, or you may have the net spinner is a huge hit. As well as a dish spinner, where you have kids maybe that aren't disabled, or family members or brothers and sisters, and they get the other kids on here and spin them around and just watch the smiles. I mean, it is like the movement and the going around and around and looking out. It's just, I will tell you, a lot of the fun of doing these is going out and watching them being used, and watching the kids and the adults, believe me, taking part. The slides, there's many kind of slides. I don't know what it is about slides. My granddaughter, you can't get her off of them. And that roller slide up in the upper right-hand corner, left-hand corner, what's interesting is it's just a slide, but they're rollers, and it's a whole different tactile sensation going down those rollers and feeling those things. And if you don't put your feet and hands out, you can kind of get going, and then it just gently slows down at the very end. And it's just a great slide that people just don't expect, and when they see these, they get pretty excited. And you'll notice there's a transfer station at the bottom. This has got synthetic turf with a hard base underneath it, so you've got a padding, so concussion-wise, you're not going to get a concussion if you did fall, but you have the ability to roll a wheelchair up there, and then if somebody can get back on their wheelchair, head back up and go for another slide. Climbing zones, kids of all ages, adults even, there's a lot of different ways that you can give the ability to climb fast, slow, high, low, and we try to build different ways of doing it, so different kids who can do different levels of movement and of climbing, we can kind of meet all their needs, anything from a loop climber to a climber wall to even a net climber. And that net climber, you can get onto it from above. You see that open space in the green fence, and I'm sorry, I saw that thing and I'm thinking, are you kidding me? I wouldn't go out in that thing. It is so popular. Kids absolutely love it. And the area below it, let's just say a kid went through that and fell, it has got this big cushioned safety zone underneath it, and it's actually kind of cool when you fall on it. So anyway, they're all safe. This is a big one, sound and tactile zone. You want more than 1 to 3 to 5 of these, because some kids, depending on their disability, will find something they like and they don't want to leave. They are a lot of fun because of the sound, the movement, the feeling of doing it, and they're actually making it happen. And that's what, and then the different sounds on the different tonal, whether it be the chimes or whatever, are fantastic. Now, that laser harp you see there is the one in Palo Alto. The woman who makes these, you'll never see that one done again. Every one is different. She will never make 2 of the same. The interesting thing about that, I don't need to be a salesman for her, but when I was doing that, look at all the people underneath there. They've got an algorithm in the computer that you would think, well, look at all the lasers, the beams on the top there. It must be just a mess of music. It organizes it, even though there's 1 or 3 or 5 people in there, and it makes it sound like this kind of musical. It's really cool, not inexpensive, but it's one of the highlights of these. People just flock to it once they know that it's there. And then the top zone, we need to give an area where younger kids can go and feel safe when their older friends or brothers and sisters are running around, and we want to make sure they're safe. These are typically located separately, and oftentimes maybe even with a low fence from the higher activity in the older kids, just to make sure that they can feel safe and have a lot of fun too. So with that, budgetary cost estimate, when you look at the 4.9 million, what we do is we keep very, very tight track and records of everything we do when it comes to bidding. That number there is based on past experience. I will tell you that's based on square footage. When you look at those concepts, they're pretty general. They're not, you know, the walls aren't drawn and how wide and how narrow, and the plinths that have the braille on them. This number is based on square footage of past experience. There's inflation built into it. This number is primarily for this year, 2018. And then we would look at, when we go to it, and if this thing gets off and kicks off the ground, we look at a minimum 5% per year, bless you, of a contingency. And we work with the city on building in a couple things, contingencies into the bid estimate when we start looking at that, as well as alternates of things. When you have a budget, we want to work directly to that budget. And there may be things that the city gets really excited about that may end up being alternates. So we like doing that to give you the ability to kind of dream and have some things in there that may be above budget, but if the numbers come in or if funding increases, you have the ability to say, wow, we get to have addendum number, alternate number 1, number 2, number 3. We prioritize those. But this is based on the 1.06 acre project sites that you've just looked at.
Thank you, Corbin, for all of that info.
I'm sorry if I went long. I do tend to, and don't get me in my office talking about this kind of stuff, because you sit down, because you'll be there for a while. This is really enjoyable, the enjoyable part of our job of doing projects like this, and working with Gail has just been wonderful. So I apologize if I went over my time.
Yes, thank you. And we're here to invite your feedback. We're here to hear the public input and have the commission receive this information and provide any feedback you have. You are not required to select A or B. This is informational, but if you have feedback for us about a preference, anything that you think is missing, anything you'd like to add or delete, or if you feel there are strengths or drawbacks to either of the designs or either of the locations, that would be very helpful for us to hear.
Wonderful, and thank you so much for putting this whole presentation together, both of you. It's been quite a while that our commission has been interested in this project, so it's great to see the evolution, and something done on paper now is really great. For those in the audience, if you would like to speak on this, if you have comments, please do fill out a blue card, again available in the front on the right-hand side. First step, before we get into public comments, do we have clarifying questions?
I have one. I know it's early in the process on the costing. So one question I would have is, as you've been doing these, I know that there are lots of partnerships and other funding sources available. Do you have a rough estimate what you would be looking at that could potentially be out there to cover? Would it be 50-50? Can you just characterize that in any way at all?
That's a real tough one.
That's why we ask.
I will say that the county is looking at a second round of funding, and the last go-around was $2 million per district. Whether that comes to fruition this year, I think what we're looking at right now is that $2 million, and that can vary depending on what they feel the true need is. They're really looking at the districts that did not get chosen last time. They're kind of focusing on that right now. But if you talk to the county, they are very pro this type of project, and they're literally looking at $10 million at a time. So they're looking at really helping cities and districts put these together. On the other side of that, yes, there are different groups that help fund. You happen to be in a great area. I will tell you that experiential There are some areas that are a little bit further away from, if you will, Silicon Valley, where there's a lot of large donors, and they're having a harder time to getting the funding or the donations, even though a lot of their employees may not live right here. They're living there, and they're having a tougher time getting it. But in your area, depending on how you're doing it, there are vehicles to do that. As far as how much the city would, I mean, quite often what happens is the city has a budget that they kind of come up with what they think they can put in their CIP to go towards this, and that's a starting point. You'll notice the last point that Gail mentioned is that we would help put together graphics and things for grants and different funding vehicles, different materials. It really depends on how far-reaching you are and who you have that has connections beyond, say, city funding, CIP funding, and how you put that together. So it's a tough one to answer. I think you have a nest egg to start with, and then you work from there, and you look at the possibilities. And what that does is that helps you schedule based on how long you think it's going to take you to raise those funds. It also helps you to put together that number to shoot for when it comes to design. Just if this helps answer part of the question, part of the phasing of that would be that we would go in with a concept that would really start getting you real numbers, so you know our heart is that concept, but I mean there's walls, there's everything in that, and now we start putting together numbers that you have more of a target, more realistic target going to. Is it 4.9? Is it 5.3? Is it 4.0? When we get that, then I think you have a better ability to start looking for those funds and then find out what the CIP program is willing to put into it.
Thank you.
I have a question. So maybe this is my ignorance, but what are the soft costs? There's at the very end of your last slide, it said soft costs, and there was a % increase. What does that include?
Yes, the number that you saw was for construction cost inclusive of what they call a bidding contingency in case you have low bidders, a year of inflation, a 10% change order allowance because there tend to be field changes. So it included certain amounts of contingency. It did not include soft costs, which would be design fees, environmental clearance, construction administration, and staff costs for project management. And that tends to run 25 to 35% of the base construction cost, not without all of the contingencies.
And would that be something in our budget? So those soft costs would be something that would be in our budget?
Yes,
sort of a Jeff question.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh.
And that just, I calculated it, it's about 6.6.
Okay.
Yeah, they would be factored into the overall project budget, the soft costs. And soft costs also include different contingencies as well. So while we say it's 25 or 30%, it's possible that it could be less. It's something that is considered a real cost to the project.
Great. Kathleen?
Oh, I was just going to ask more about the money. So the money that comes from the county, those are grants, like a one-time grant, and then would there be other sources for grants? And you were talking about donors, so like corporate sponsorships or donors? Is that is that what you're alluding to? Okay, thank you.
First, thank you for the presentation. I wish you made parks like this for adults. We are age-friendly city.
You can go and have a great time, seriously. You won't be alone.
So this is a overall larger design. There were no mention of things like water stations or solar enable outlets, or would that be like smaller details included in this? Okay.
This is a concept.
Okay.
Preliminary concept. I mean, that's why I mentioned that there's dots and arrows for the circulation. The walkways aren't in there. Okay. When we get down to that, I'll just tell you, Verity Design, where does that come from? We really look at sustainability in all of our projects. And when solar and everything you're mentioning, we build that into the projects, not just because it's the right thing to do, but because it's an educational thing. People can come to the park and go, are you kidding me? We're sitting here, doing a splash play or whatever, and it's all the power's run by solar. Fantastic. And it's a way to educate the community and make it more viable.
And I have another question. With this kind of design or this kind of park, what is the year-to-year maintenance? What are the features that require more maintenance than the other? Like is there a long-term that they just, once you install them, they are there, and then there are maybe some things which require more updates every year?
You see colors, you'll notice there's some green areas, that's landscape around here and there. So you have your city staff landscape type maintenance. Now when you look at a playground, you really want the kids to maximize the play areas for the kids, but softening it with landscape, you've got the general maintenance in that sense. One of the things, the play equipment is pretty well there for the long haul. Things do wear. Two items that you may see in here are surfacing. That's what you're thinking. What's going to get worn? The surfacing that you're dealing with, whether it's the poured in place rubber resilient surfacing, or if we do things like you saw in some of the pictures where we have a synthetic turf type of a surfacing. There's a lifespan to those, but that's also based on use. There's great systems out there where you have a slide, you have a swing, and you go out to these rubber resilient surface play areas and you see these worn spots that look terrible. There are systems where you can put in place, and I'm not talking about black square pads. There are ways to do it where those pad areas, through the colors and the design in it, can literally be a higher play surface, and when it's worn, it can be replaced, and you don't have to replace the whole thing. There's not a square cut into it with a new, really pretty purple with a faded purple. There's ways to design it to where when it's been replaced after 8-10 years, you don't even know it. You know it's new, but you don't know if someone's cut it and done it because it's part of the design and the theme. Those are the two major things.
Okay. I like the part that you said all the trees would be protected in either of the designs over here. Is there any other things being replaced when we put these parks here? Is there anything being displaced?
Good point. I would add that in concept B, there is a basketball hoop and a little bit of paving for that basketball hoop. Concept B does displace that basketball hoop. Verdi actually provided a graphic that is not here showing an alternate location that the hoop could be replaced. So the hoop could be moved and paving provided at a suitable nearby location so that the park could still benefit from that feature. But that is the only, aside from that either of these play areas would displace the current play area at that location, I'm not aware of any other displacements.
Okay, that's good. One last question. You said there are a couple of entry points in this design concept. Is there going to be a low-level fence around the entire so that the kids can't walk out to the parking lot? Or
Actually, 5 feet would be probably the lowest we would suggest, because 42, 48 inches, you can kind of hop over those pretty easily. We want safety for the kids inside, but we also don't want anyone feeling like someone's walking by looking sketchy, is my child safe? That we want everyone to, when they go in, they feel safe inside and outside.
Okay, so they will be all fenced. Okay, thank you.
Can I just add, I say 5 feet and people think, is that going to look like a prison? If you'll notice that the fencing is in landscape areas, so it's in a softened buffer area, so you're not going to see a flat rubber surfacing and then this 5-foot fence sticking up and wonder, that doesn't look real attractive. We try to soften that, make it kind of blend in.
Excellent. Any other clarifying questions from the commission? Wonderful. We will move on to public comment. First up, we have Katie Moore.
Good evening. I went and visited the magical playground with my husband and one of my sons a while back, and I couldn't get them off the laser harp, along with a bunch of other adults, and they all wanted to know how it worked and why it didn't sound bad. So that was kind of interesting. So they hung around there for quite a while. I also noticed they had some hills areas that were like kind of grassy, I can't recall now, but the kids were taking scraps of cardboard and creating their own little way to slide down, and I thought that was really cool because it reminded me of, sledding in the snow growing up. I'm a little concerned looking at the map, if that works. Okay, and there's Stelling, not so well, not too well. Anyway, you can see the parking lot down here. Oh, there you go. You can see the parking lot. And my kids used to play soccer at Jolly Man and do Winter Warriors and stuff. And we would end up parking on Dumas. And this parking lot here would get pretty filled up. So I'm wondering if someone has done some kind of study about how they're going to park there. And to my recollection, you can't park on Stelling Road. So that's a little bit of a concern that I have. If there's any plan, are you going to try to increase the parking? So anyway, that's an issue. And the question about gates was already handled. Let's see. I do have one sort of added comment, and that is because I'm all in favor of this project. I'm kind of hoping that when you get Valco back, that you perhaps use some leverage to see if you can have them, when they do their play areas, have all-inclusive elements to that, if there's some way. And I'm kind of curious just how, I hate to even ask this, how have cities not been sued for not providing all-inclusive playgrounds already? And maybe that's part of why this is, sort of happening, is because you really do need to provide them all over the place. So that's kind of a question, if there's some history for how this has happened with the ADA, just kind of curious about that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next up, we have Lisa Warren.
So a lot of my questions have already been asked and answered, so that's great. I did want to make a comment, though, because there was a clear distinction between all-inclusive and inclusive, yet all the slides and the agenda don't include the word all. Well, no, your slides did, excuse me. Your slides did, but the city slides don't, and nor does the agenda. It just says inclusive. So that seems like a pretty important correction to make moving forward. I don't know. Since you did bring up what the distinction is. Like I said, most of my questions have been answered. Actually, when Kitty brought up parking, I'm assuming because a lot of the people visiting may be in need of a larger handicap parking spot, that we're going to lose some parking spots. And I don't know, I'm assuming that's been accounted for. If you need a certain number, that they may need to be larger. I love it, and I would request that. I mean, I'm kind of curious, actually, about what all the screening categories are, because I know some of the other locations would have had better public transit to them, which may be important, but we don't have good public transit anywhere. But I'm also would encourage you, as you go, as whoever is tasked with getting the money, try to get too much and then be able to do one somewhere else in the city. Don't cut it at, our goal is 6.3. Tell them double that.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. Next up, we have Danessa Tekmansky.
So I'm Danessa Tekmansky. Hello again. I'm really excited about what you showed. I think it looks fantastic. And I was sitting there thinking, there's a young lady that I kind of took under my wing when she was 8 years old. That was 25 years ago. She's 32 years old now, that has autism. And I am now her proud auntie. And so she goes to the Morgan Autism Center, and I don't know if you're familiar with that, but I go there occasionally with her mom, to pick her up as a surprise. And I know the director, wonderful, wonderful man. And every year they have a huge fundraiser, and it is astounding when you see how many families in this area have kids, not just kids, but adults with autism that are, they're adult children, that would absolutely love to have places like that to go. And when they have their fundraisers, it's amazing the philanthropists that come out of the woodwork. So I was thinking in terms of funding and looking for grants, and getting ideas about what would appeal to the handicap, to talk to the director of the Morgan Center. His name is Brad Boardman. He's a wonderful man. And he might be able to point you in the direction of where you could get some funds. Just an idea. So thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. Any additional blue cards? Great, now we can go ahead and move into discussion from the commission. Any thoughts or discussion items?
I did see there was a art wall installation in one of the concepts. Yeah, themed, art wall fence. It would be nice to collaborate with Fine Art Commission and see if we can get some local artists, provide some art for those walls. And maybe that could be one of the fundraiser is to go paint, you know, like they were at the Blackberry Farm, there's a tile wall, or so that could be included in the plan to be a fundraiser for the.
Yeah. Okay, so we're done. We're done with questions, but this is still a question. So what's next? So now you've done this presentation. We're really excited. We've talked about this for a long time, and we've come. Am I done? You know, the presentation before this, which was fabulous, where we looked at all the parks in Cupertino, and sort of feels like we're getting closer and closer. We've now identified a park. Now we've identified some things we want in the park. So is there something we can do to make this happen sooner, or what's next? Is my question.
Yeah, Commissioner, you'll see on the next item about the citywide Parks and Rec master plan. Among the objectives and actions, there are some that relate to this type of element. And now that we have a feasibility study and we've done evaluations and metrics and concepts, this could be elevated to the council level for consideration to include as a capital improvement project.
Commissioner, if I could add, we certainly, if the county opens up another round of grants, we certainly will be at the table.
Okay, good.
Yeah, they both look great. You were looking for feedback of what we liked about one or the other. I like some of the elements in B. I like the change in elevation. I think that gives it a lot of interest. It's also, seems a little, since it's behind the parking lot, has that much buffer more from the traffic on Stelling. So it might be a little bit more quiet, especially for those who are sensitive to traffic noise. And you mentioned, you know, the mature trees that are around the existing basketball court. So that those would stay there even though the basketball court might possibly move. So I think those are all nice features about B. And I think the parking is something that if this is going to be a regional draw, or at least a little bit wider area draw, which I'm sure it will be, that we definitely need to consider the parking.
Great. So a couple things that I wanted to highlight. In a similar vein, traffic, big issue, so do want to see what the impact is on parking, how this also fits in with our connected trails and trail system as well. I know that this is a concept and doesn't have some of the other more specific elements that we've talked about throughout the general plan, such as charging stations, water bottle stations to refill water bottles, things like that. But if it is along that path, which would be great to make sure it is, then ensuring that that's included. I did like the elevation change in Site B, as long as the vision areas for the parents were present, because I think that's super important. I watch a 3-year-old regularly, and I also have a nephew who has Down syndrome. So this is of personal excitement to me. A couple of things I am concerned about is the shade sail. When we went to the one in San Jose, I think that was the first one we went to, right? The one in San Jose. The shade sails weren't actually very effective at all, and that's one of the things that the staffer in the city had told us, like, didn't work. So it concerns me that that's that's covering so much space when it might not be effective. So if we have, especially because this is the east-west be as east-west. So if it's not going to provide as much coverage, is there an alternative that we can use that might be a little bit better than a shade sail? Now, if there have been developments since that one was built that I'm not aware of, then please do let me know. The other thing is, you had mentioned that each of these kind of had a theme. It had a concept behind it. And given how diverse the community is here, if there's a way we can do something that's, all around the world, or take a tour around the world, that had a flavor of different places, that might be something really interesting for the kids to connect to. And I'm sure, especially given the diversity within Cupertino, seeing those home elements in a play structure as well as something that I never had the luxury of seeing, but would be amazing to be able to bring to these playground goers as well. And then the last thing, where is it? The stage. So in terms of programming the stage, the size was one of the things that was of importance to me. I wanted to make sure that we could program, and so if we do need to increase the size of that stage to make it possible for plays to come for kids, or a small band that is, child appropriate to come and play music or guitar, that's something that I think is really engaging, really pleasing, to make sure that all those playground goers have access to. And then the last thing is, as Meenakshi had mentioned, having the Fine Arts Commission or members of our community really involved with planning, or having the Cupertino touch on these different elements would be great. And so if we did end up going with something that was, around the world in 80 days, or something like that, then I'm sure that there are members of the community that would be more than happy to contribute their expertise and their history to different parts of this playground as well.
All right, so I was thinking, I actually personally like the A site concept more, just because there's more picnic areas, more space for the families to get together while the kids are playing, or and there is some elevation different, like the area where the slides are going, is that's higher up, right? There's a so is there, I know these are not the exact plans, but there are features from both of the plans that we like. So when we come down to really getting a design, I think we all like the elevation difference, more space for the families to get together, the theater, those to be maintained, and then that would be interesting. And of course, the art would be really a key part of it.
Okay, just a couple other things. I'm glad to hear that the trees are being retained. So I used to bring my kids to that park a lot to play, so I think it might be helpful for us to go out maybe on our own to take a look. But as I recall, there's more shade on the Site A, and so that's why I was kind of drawn to it, because I know those redwood trees, the grove there. You've got the oak trees on the other side, but not as much. I remember that was a lot more sunny there. So I kind of agreed with you. I was drawn to A. I really do like a lot of the elements that you have here. And like you say, the art wall, and I know we've already asked questions, but would that be more interactive, or would it be static? Like, would the kids be able to do art on the wall, or would it just be a painted wall, or it could be anything, I suppose, right?
It could be anything we want. And we talked about, I heard the word expertise in the art, and I know you've got this elsewhere, but getting the kids to do art and have their art at their playground, and then you said your kids came when they were younger to this park. Can you imagine them being in their 20s and 30s and 40s and going, that's still there? Yeah, exactly. I did that, how many, but moving art, the imagination, let it run wild, and make it interactive. There's something that was in the report from it's in the feasibility study. Places you can go and be affected and affect the place you're in. So things that change, things that move, things that you make an impact on. And then if you're with somebody, maybe you leave and it stays that way until somebody else moves it or whatever, but you had an opportunity to make something change. And there's a lot of autistic kids where they're just very quiet. But something like that, I mean, look at what happened when they gave them iPads. If you do something like that and they change it and the color changes, or it's shiny or something, or there's a texture, and it's like, I impacted something, and you can just watch they just light up. So I would say
Probably
both
interactive.
and everything.
Yeah, I would like to see it interactive. And then I'm glad you have bike racks. I mean, because it is all inclusive, right? So we're going to have people that maybe can't actually ride their bikes there. And then also I agree with Meenakshi, the places, the quiet places to sit for the families to sort of gather and just observe or watch or relax or what have you. So I think both plans are wonderful. And I know we already went through this process of looking at all the different sites, and I think it was pretty, we all, yeah, it was unanimous that we all agreed that this was the best site. So really appreciate both of these plans.
Great. So from hearing from my fellow commissioners, if the site A has greater shade throughout the year, then that would be a large influencer. I mean, I don't get sunburn, but I've heard it's bad, so so would love to make sure that area has as much shade and protection from the sun as possible.
Can I mention one thing, though? And it was already brought up about the root zones. In looking at those, going a step further and really start looking at drip lines and activities and footings, we really want to also look at how we can maximize the shade, but also maximize the area and not cause problems with the trees. And I'm not saying we take trees out or we look for barren parts of the soccer fields, but if it's so shaded and so heavily treed, that's really going to preclude some of the activities that we can put in that area. So all of a sudden, the untouchable area kind of grows. So we just want to be sensitive to that as well. Somebody mentioned they've been out to Palo Alto. Those trees were 96-inch box trees that were brought in on those planters. They're not inexpensive, but what they did is, there's a few shade structures, very few actually, in the top of the hill and such. They're really looking at the shade trees providing the shade in the future. Morgan Hill, we're putting shade sails in the design and big trees, and when the trees get big enough, the shade sails go away. So there's ways to look at it. What I would hate, I'm not saying A is wrong, I'm just saying we will look at, when we get finite, we'll start taking a look to see fall zones and paving surfaces and things, and how that works with the root zones, and how that works with a larger number of bigger trees. Something to think about.
Some are redwoods, or some redwoods, some oaks, maybe they're affected.
Sure, differently.
I should have asked this in the question form before. Water feature in the park, is that a possibility or a thing to be added?
Yeah. Yes, it could be added. If you're looking for a complete kind of spray play or splash pad facility, that would probably be something you could think about pursuing at another site if you want a large-scale one. We could certainly have spray play here or a water feature here, and in fact there is one at the San Jose Rotary Play Garden. I know the commissioners, you've been there, so that is an option for us.
Thank you.
As long as we're giving our bids to what we like. So when we did our field trips, which were really, thank you for taking on our field trips, because we really got to see, see all these features. But that laser harp, I know that's probably maybe the most expensive feature, but also that was awesome. And I think really, someone mentioned the autistic kids and things and making things happen, like literally. So I'm going to just put a plug in for wherever we do this, that we keep that as a feature.
Great. And the last thing that I wanted to bring up, this was mentioned in the public comment, but actually when I attended the Parks and Rec Department staff meeting, a couple of staffers had brought this up too, is inclusion of some of these elements through throughout other parks in our city. So it would be great to, as we're planning this, if there's any sort of advice as to, here are the key elements that are either the most fun that we can bring to other parks, or who knows, something where it's cheaper if we bulk order and we just put a couple of different kinds of swings into our other parks that are more inclusive, then that's something that would definitely be interesting to look into as we do this. So it's not just tunnel vision to this, but looking at the others as well. Excellent. Thank you so much for taking time and for your wonderful presentation. I hope we've given you a lot to to bring back to the team. All right. How do we feel about a 5-minute break?
Nice.
Wonderful. We're going to go ahead and take a 5-minute break and come back at 8:41. meeting will resume shortly. Please return to your commission chairs. Excellent. We shall call the meeting back to order at 8:42. Gavel's fun. All right. My apologies. We did miss a request to speak from the oral communications at the beginning that is unrelated to the item number 5, Citywide Parks and Recreation System Master Plan. So my apologies. If I can have Lola Kashyap please come up to the front. And thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you. My name is Lola Kashyap, 18-year resident of Cupertino. I'm here with two related requests. One is regarding the dirt trail that runs along the creek at McClellan Park. It's not the main trail. It's a little dirt trail, which years ago was converted into an interpretive trail, but it's kind of overgrown and hard to go through there. I was wondering if there was a way for the Parks and Rec department to kind of come take a look at that and see if they can clear it up a bit so people can actually use it. And it would make a great running trail, and that's my personal wish. So that's the reason I'm here. And on a related note, I'm hoping that when the old Sims property gets developed, there will be a dirt trail along the perimeter of that property as well, going along the creek. So, it would connect to the one on this side, and combined make a decent running trail. So that's my request, and thank you for listening patiently to me.
Thank you so much. All right, next up we have item number 5. It's the Citywide Parks and Recreation System Master Plan, Goals, Objectives, and Actions. As a reminder to the folks in the audience, if you would like to speak to the commission, please fill out a blue card up at the front. All right, take it away.
Good evening, Commission. Thank you for having me here this evening to provide an update on the Parks and Recreation System Master Plan and to walk you through the document that was attached to your staff report, which contained goals, objectives, and actions. And it is chock full of all kinds of excellent things. Since we're looking at a 20-plus year planning horizon, we got so many great ideas from you and from the community and from our outreach efforts, and we listened carefully to all of them. And we're here to walk you through those tonight and invite public input and request your feedback. So I will get going. There's a lot to plow through. I'll do my very best to get you through it as efficiently as possible without skipping anything.
So, Gail, before we start, so you're looking for feedback. Are there any specific questions that you're looking to get answers to, so we can keep those in mind as we go through it?
Yeah, specifically, I'll be looking for feedback on, is there anything important that's missing? Is there anything that is wrong or off base or that should be revised? Have we captured the right objectives and actions, and are these the right tools that will get us to where we want to be by the year 2040? Have we done that? So vision, mission, and goals. You will recall that last summer we did a community-wide survey with over 1,200 respondents. That was one of the many types of community outreach we've done. And based on all of those efforts, there are 12 primary themes that arose that are shown with these icons. We heard during that process a range of things that people want to see in our parks and recreation system. These are some of the descriptors that we got feedback on. The vision statement is that statement in purple. It came forward some time ago and was refined by you and by the City Council. The mission statement is in purple here. It was in your report. So that's just a recap of what is in our mission statement and what its intention is. Goals. Back in September of last year, 6 goals came forward to you and then went to the City Council. They are noted. The kind of a short narrative about those is here, and we've given them each kind of a 1 or 2 word title to make them a little bit snappier. Well, since last September, with the additional work we've done, we split one of the goals, goal number 2, about a walkable, bikeable, accessible city and providing access. That's been split into 2 separate goals, one about connectivity and trails and ways to get around without single occupancy vehicles. The other one is about equitable access, and it's really about distributing parks and facilities throughout the city. You and the council did some heavy lifting on that topic. All those maps we brought forward about who is in proximity to what, that was of interest to you and to our residents. So we gave that its own topic to kind of honor its importance. And Commissioner Stanek, you asked what we're looking for tonight. Basically, you were reading my mind, and we want to hear, do these objectives and actions we're going to plow through, are they really going to help us implement these big master plan goals? And should anything be added or revised or removed? That's what we're looking for. Okay, that being said, of the 7 goals, goal number 1, we've titled conservation. It's really the one that revolves around nature, access to nature, preserving and protecting nature. And the descriptor, you'll see, oh, by the way, the goals throughout this document or this presentation are on top. They're in teal, kind of that teal blue color. Then the objectives, which translate into what it will take to achieve those goals, those are in purple. And then the actions are in green. And the actions are, how do we actually deliver those things? What do we do to implement the objectives? So here we are at goal number 1. It's in teal. It's about conservation. It is really about our natural areas and protecting and preserving and enhancing them. This goal has 6 objectives. The kind of key part of the objectives is highlighted in purple. And hopefully you've got handouts that are colored and can follow along with me as desired. And take notes or also feel free to jump in and ask clarifying questions as we go along. I would like to break this up, but because we need to take community input, instead of having 5 batches of community input, I'll just go through the whole thing in one shot, so please bear with me. The 6 key objectives are about protecting natural resources, managing them, stewardship in our parks and on city lands, working with the local ecology, experiencing nature, and environmental education. And you'll recall that when we did these surveys, always at the very top of community desires was nature, access to nature, preserving and protecting nature. We brought forward charts to you and to the City Council. over a year ago. It was actually this time last year, about charts about access to nature, where there's nature access, opportunities to foster natural systems. So we've been in this conversation for quite a while because it's of such overarching importance. So this first objective under the conservation goal is how do we protect these resources? And in green are the actions we can take working with partners. Another action is to connect the Stevens Creek Corridor habitat, its whole length north to south in Cupertino. Another idea is to continue evaluating opportunities to protect parcels in key locations that have habitat or wildlife value or in creek corridors. Collaborating to enhance or expand habitat areas and to do restoration, not just on city property, but in county parks, open space preserves. Those will involve collaborating with other agencies and other property owners. But we want to be on record that we feel that's important. And the last action under this objective is supporting efforts to acquire, protect, or restore undeveloped tracts if they become available. There are large undeveloped parcels, particularly in the southwest part of our town, south and west side, that are undeveloped, and if they come into play, there's a big opportunity there for us.
Quick question as we're going through this. Are these in order of importance, or is just...
No,
okay.
They are not. Great question. And by the way, this, in general, I'm going to kind of collapse all the narrative into these sound bites with colors. And so this is a summary of what is in the narrative report, all 19 pages of narrative that you read. Thank you. So this is verbatim what came out of your report, so I'm not going to read this. We're skipping, but in case there are questions, you feel the wording on something needs to be varied, I can go back to these, and you can, if you have questions about specific wording or feel something needs to change. So we're going to blast right by the ones that are verbatim.
Perfect.
Okay. Okay, the next objective is about managing our natural and habitat areas. On property that we own or we operate, and to be mindful of the ecology and the ecological functions of those areas. So there are a series of actions that go with this one, and they really are about enhancing functions where we can, opportunities to create pollinator pathways. That was on one of those maps you saw, adding bird and pollinator friendly features, creating or enhancing park forests, contiguous belts of trees, supporting efforts to protect and expand oak woodlands in our county, renovating the golf course at Blackberry Farm at such a time as we renovate it to improve its habitat value, and supporting efforts to achieve public ownership and restore habitat on those undeveloped tracts if opportunities occur. So that's a different way of restating that previous action. So there's the detailed. And then why are we talking about conservation? Well, these are photos that my colleague took in May in Blackberry Farm, standing on the trail, right by the Captain Stevens play area. We had a great horned owl family, a mom and a dad, and the baby owlets hatched and grew up, and it was quite the viewing opportunity right there where we live. And when we are good stewards and provide habitat for wildlife and nurture it, the wildlife appreciates it. So that's just a little photo op. And thank you, Keith Wandry, who is McClellan Ranch Preserve staff. He took those photos. Okay, now we're on objective number 3, which is about natural resource maintenance and stewardship. This just has 3 quick bullets. to be balanced in our maintenance and sort of look at erosion control, removal of invasives, that sort of thing. Develop a maintenance management plan that addresses our natural resources. So that will help our public works staff guide their activities and continue to work with volunteers and partners in these natural areas. So there's the details. Moving right along on objective number 4, which is D. That's really about the local ecology. It's focusing on Santa Clara Valley ecology where we are. And the 6 actions that go with this are about being mindful of natural features when we are enhancing or building parks and operating them, preserving our trees, increasing tree canopy and developing a tree palette and a plan for canopy succession, updating our overall plant palette for ecological benefits, visual interest, climate-appropriate plants, and drought tolerance. Incorporating what they call green infrastructure. That's kind of public works speak for stormwater management. Things like bioswales, rain gardens, permeable pavers, detention ponds, all those sorts of things. Incorporating those into our parks and park planning. They do protect water quality, and they are multi-benefit items. And also replacing underused lawn areas with better things that are more wildlife friendly, more native, and can provide different sorts of value. This does not mean replacing a sports field, but it's turf where we don't need turf, where it's not delivering a function. Okay. We are on 1E. That's about opportunities to experience nature. There's quite a few green action items under this one. One talks about locating access points in a way that's mindful, that avoids sensitive habitat or sensitive species. One is about interpretation opportunities, adding nature play, encouraging interaction with nature through a variety of means, managing our existing orchards. We have an orchard at the Stockelmeyer Ranch. We have an orchard at Berrien Park. Certain management things that could occur there because they are part of our agricultural past and they're part of our park system. We also certainly have heard of folks' desire to have more community gardens at more locations. We can add plantings that are better wildlife substrate and create microhabitats. There's lots of ways to do that. We also think having quiet areas with seating are another way to expand our opportunities to experience nature, to have a place to sit and see things unfold. When you are quiet, you see and hear different things. And lastly, supporting trails. And there's quite a bit more trails in creek corridors and natural areas in a sensitive manner. There's more about trails in the next goal. So we are whisking along here. This is our last objective under this conservation category, and that's about environmental education and interpretation of our natural resources. So this has a series of actions. We feel that keeping the Stevens Creek corridor as our hub for environmental education and interpretation is a good choice. Our environmental education center is super successful, and the programming we offer is much appreciated. So that's a great thing to continue maintaining and building upon. We think collaborating with schools, especially schools located near parks, provides quite a bit of opportunity. There can be outdoor classrooms. There's an opportunity for neighborhood parks by providing more natural elements and learning areas in any of our neighborhood parks. Also, we can expand environmental education and interpretive programming to other sites, not just focusing on the Stevens Creek corridor area. We can bring our knowledge and those activities to a variety of other locations. There's also an action to continue supporting the 3rd grade Creek Studies program at McClellan Ranch Preserve and any subsequent or successor programs. That program generally is over 2,200 students per year, plus parents and teachers. We do outreach with them. The students come out and have a very hands-on experience about watersheds, and it's very successful, and this plan suggests formally acknowledging that we want to keep something like that going. And lastly, is pursuing some sort of collaboration with Deer Hollow Farm to provide environmental education. They do all kinds of program, but we don't have a formal arrangement with them aside from providing funding and an annual request for financial sponsorship. So that takes care of our first goal area. Thanks for listening through that. Now we'll move on to our goal about connections. And this is the one about trails, walkways, and bikeways, and connecting those things and connecting to parks and to important community destinations. There are 4 objectives here. One is about implementing the trails and paths. Another is about our off-street network. Another is about walking in parks. And another is about encouraging walking and biking to parks and minimizing parking demand. You'll recall you saw this map when we came forward with the geographic assessment and the kinds of trail opportunities that there are and the ones that are important to pursue. This has gone forward. So with that being said, our first objective under this connection goal is to implement trails and paths in all of the local and regional plans that are within our city. And that includes our own bicycle transportation plan, our pedestrian transportation plan, our general plan, the countywide trail plan, our general plan, and so on. So this has some actions under it to support that implementation and how that implementation occurs. The green items involve improving pedestrian and bike access to parks, acquiring open space along creeks or utility corridors for trails through kind of regional outreach and other means, requiring dedication or easement for trails as part of the development process where that's appropriate, establishing and expanding joint use agreements with Santa Clara Valley Water District for creek trails, and continuing to pursue opportunities for multi-use trails and walkways, even if they're not in the plan. If something comes up or we see an opportunity that we shouldn't just say, oh, it's not in the plan. If it makes sense, we want to allow for new things to come forward. And then wayfinding signage. And you'll recall in the outreach we've done, trails is the 1, 2, 3, 5th line down here. And trails and walking opportunities are also very high importance to our residents and to our community. So that one, oh, there we go. I was wondering where my little oval was. Okay, so there's the details on that one. Now, we'll move along to 2B, which is the off-street trails and protected bikeways. So not just bike lanes on streets, but the protected bikeways where there's a physical barrier, and off-street trails, which are more inviting to a wider range of people. So some actions here to encourage that. The first one, there's a little detail behind that one, and it has to do with the way our bike and ped plans went forward. They were prepared by the Public Works Department, and they did big matrices and had criteria and rankings, and they were ranking things about safety and kind of engineering standards, and they did a very nice job. But in the way they ranked, they didn't prioritize the way we might have improving access to parks and to our recreation destinations. Those got a low weighting, and in chatting with the Public Works staff, they are open to reevaluating the criteria, the ranking, and the weightings when they revise and update those plans, which they will do periodically. So this bullet, this action item right here, is to have a stake in the ground that we feel it's important to weight access to parks. They weighted access to schools, but access to parks was much lower. So we'd like to have the opportunity to rethink that. The next couple of actions are about connections to regional trails, about filling connectivity gaps and possibilities to extend our trail system to open space preserves and county parks, connecting pathways to more locations, extending some of the ones we're already thinking about or that already exist. They could potentially be extended, and providing more trails and rail corridors and off-street places and creek corridors. And lastly, to improve connectivity and access via thinking creatively about rights-of-way easements, ones we don't have and ones we could have. So those are opportunities for us. These photos are just of the Stevens Creek Trail within McClellan Ranch, within Blackberry Farm, and within Stocklemeyer Ranch. I take photos everywhere I go. There's the detailed language, which we will skip by. And our next to last objective on this one is to support walking in parks via looped pathways or trails. Some of our, you don't want to like just walk one way and turn around. It's a lot nicer if you can do a loop and have a varied experience. And some of our parks could have loops that don't have complete loops, providing amenities that would make walking more inviting, and varying the length, type, and challenge levels of trails to invite more kinds of users to enjoy walking. And you'll remember from one of our surveys when we asked people what activities they or their household participate in, the very top two things were nature walks and hiking, and walking for pleasure or fitness across all age groups, ethnicities, and geography. And this is the responses from our residents, but very high participation. And here is our last objective under connections, is to, that was the one about walking and biking to our parks and rec destinations, how to encourage that and how to reduce parking demand through things we can do that are physical or things we can do programmatically. So here's some actions. We can make the entrances to our parks more welcoming for peds and cyclists. We can provide secure bike parking and bike repair stations, publish recommended walking and biking route information, encouraging drop-in group walks, improving connections, encouraging carpools and shuttles, and a list of targeted improvements that could do that and could help reduce parking demand. And also, lastly, if the city starts exploring providing a city shuttle service, which has been talked about on and off pretty consistently, this notes that we should participate in the process and identify our important park and recreation needs and destinations, that those should be considered if a city shuttle service is ever pursued. So great, we've gotten through that one. Good job, team. Yep, we're getting there. Okay. Now number 3, goal 3 is about equitable access. There's only 3 objectives on this one. One is to provide parks within walking distance of our residential areas. The next is parkland acquisition, continue to implement that. And lastly is enhancing park and facility access, since this is about equitable access. So number 1 of 3. This is about providing parks within walking distance for most residents. And we talked about this in detail, and the council's talked about this in detail. And we talked about it at our study session, and we've mapped and remapped how that can work, and folks who live within a half-mile walk of what kinds of parks. So these actions say that let's strive to provide parks within a half-a-mile walk of residents in all residential zoning, except for that very large residential hillside zoning, those very large parcels that kind of snug up against the open space preserves and county parks. So it might not be possible, but we want to keep that as a goal. We also are noting that for new neighborhood parks, where we're aiming to provide facilities that will serve the neighbors themselves, to strive for these kinds of things, that there's public access during regular park hours, they're inner city, that they're not serving regional needs, they really can target the neighbors, and that they would have multiple things that would attract and serve the neighbors. Here's an action about what is an underserved area, an area with access to less than 3 acres of parks. And we've got that map already. We brought it forward to you. And lastly, neighborhood parks don't serve everything that everyone wants. We still do need specialized facilities for unique recreation needs. You know, a dog park, if you have a dog in your household, you may be very interested in a dog park. Here's the detailed language about that objective, more detailed language. And we brought maps. Here's the 10-minute walk map to all parks, the 10-minute walk map to neighborhood serving parks. And this was the one about how many acres of parks are within a 10-minute walk of you. And then another one about how many neighborhood serving parks using that narrower definition are within a 10-minute walk of you. So we've done this mapping, so we're very aware of where those areas are that would benefit from increased park space. Okay, so action number 2 of 3, excuse me, objective 2 of 3 is to basically keep up with parkland acquisition the very best we can. And there are a couple of actions here. Our general plan calls for us to provide at least 3 acres per 1,000 residents, so we're absolutely agreeing with that as an action. And when we look at acquisitions, balance a range of things, you need to look at cost, availability, needs, and we currently have 3.6 acres per 1,000 residents when we count all of our open spaces, including the ones that are not developed parks. And we'd like to strive to maintain that. We think that's a worthy action to have in this plan. We also would like to prioritize park acquisition in those underserved areas, and we know that the north and east sides of Cupertino are underserved, both from proximity and in terms of acreage that's available to them. We'd like to aim for new neighborhood parks that are big enough to provide for the neighbors' needs and goals, bigger than a Vest Pocket Park, so big enough to serve active and passive recreation. And there's an action about pursuing partnerships with school districts. There's a very fine opportunity there to improve park access. This one has a lot of actions under it, so there's one more page of actions, even though these are summarized. Joint use agreement with schools, explore expanding those, acquiring land for trail and riparian corridors through various means, and then being a little more creative. Unique options or partnerships or opportunities. In planning departments, they talk about POPOs, which are privately owned public open space. And a POPO would be Main Street Park is a POPO. So is Cali Mill Plaza. So is the Cupertino Center amphitheater space. So it's private property, but it's open to the public. So there's a range of things that could be in this other ways to achieve a city park or public park and open space. There's a list of things there. And then lastly is to be mindful of new developments or redevelopments and parkland dedication and in lieu fees, and make sure that in lieu fees actually cover, if we're not getting a park land dedication, make sure that the fee covers the cost to acquire the land that's not getting dedicated. So there's the detailed language. There's several pages of detailed language there. And now we're on our last objective on this equitable access goal and some actions. This is about enhancing access. And one way to achieve that is to use programming solutions to bring more kinds of recreation to more places through mobile programs, pop-up programs, or movable facilities like we've initiated in our neighborhood events program, movable movie screens. So that's a way to enhance access by expanding what occurs where. We'd also like to see if we can increase public access to non-city-owned community facilities, various things to explore there. We can improve entryways to be more welcoming. We can improve access for motor vehicles and for public transportation systems. There's a list of ideas there. Also provide facilities that we can use year-round to the extent feasible, or make them usable year-round. What does that take, to make something more usable in cold or wet weather? And explore how we can deliver more recreation and more access from things we already have? Can we add programming to a building that currently is closed on nights or weekends? Can we get more use out of the same field to explore those sorts of things? And lastly, to strive for universal designed access, which is code for all-inclusive, or we can reword that, to parks and facilities for all people regardless of ability. That's part of equitable access. So here's the long, detailed language, and we've gotten through that one. I'll take a sip and keep moving. Yes, thank you for bearing with me on this. Okay, our next goal is enhancement, and it's enhancing our parks and our facilities and our offerings for to address broad interests of our community. There are seven objectives that go with this goal. And actually, I'm going to stop reading through the green because we actually get to them on the following pages. So I'll just skip through that. And just as a reminder, now that I skipped through, it talks about diversifying opportunities and more varied facilities. And this slide came forward the very first presentation that MIG did to this commission. They talked about their preliminary park observations. They went to every single park in our city and evaluated it. And they noted that there are some strengths, but that we have pretty limited variety and diversity in our park system, and that our parks could be more comfortable and user-friendly. And so they noticed that immediately. Okay, so moving along to our enhancement goal. The first objective is strategic reinvestment when we renovate or expand facilities. And there's some actions here. One is to think through, before we just replace something in kind, if it's at the end of its use life, especially if we're making a major reinvestment, evaluate the benefit and be thoughtful. Another is to improve user experience through all kinds of things we can make more welcoming. The next action focuses on Quinlan Community Center and the Sports Center, and that if or when we get to the point of evaluating enhancements or major investments at those locations, to also consider the new facility needs that have been identified through this process. The next to last action is to make sure we continue talking with our public works staff that is busy maintaining all of these facilities and parks for us. And they regularly do assessments, and we need to incorporate their learning into our planning process. So they are well along on a citywide facility assessment to determine what needs a new roof when, or new HVAC, how soon, where, so that they can be prepared to keep our facilities running properly. So there's an opportunity, if they need to sink some money into a building, we can get more bang for the buck if we work with them on those sorts of things. The last action is when we have some of our smaller facilities, when they reach the end of their use life, be mindful of that. We've got a couple of sites where we've got a small building that is being used for something completely different from its original purpose. One example is Monte Vista Rec Center, which is a former school. We're running a preschool and gymnastics and martial arts out of there. And the Wilson Ceramic Studio, we're doing our very best, but when those facilities are up for rethinking, if we build a new facility and those programs can be better hosted, gymnastics with a higher ceiling, for example, then that should figure into how we plan for those. There's the detailed. I'll speed up a little bit here. On enhancement, this is about when we think about major facilities or major renovations. now or in the future. The actions are to prepare a business and ops plan look at what will the facility deliver, what kind of users will it attract, what will it cost to operate, what will it cost to build, would a different size or scale or different amenities serve more people, and to have to do your homework before you dive in and just say we need XYZ. Joint use partnerships should be explored for those things before we just build something new. Maybe we can be more efficient by partnering with another user or school district or a different entity. And a similar action is to explore potential partners and sponsors before we plan and design our major new facilities. We've heard about partnerships throughout this process and the synergy that you can achieve. And lastly is an action about adding those major things we've been talking about for many months now, the things we've heard from our community outreach that there's high desire. So there's the details on that one. Now we've got one that's just about swimming and water play. This is a fun one, finally. So the actions here are to continue operating the Blackberry Farm Pool Complex for leisure and swimming, and if it's ever feasible to expand the swimming season to be open to that. Pursue partnerships with other swimming pools, if those are feasible. Evaluate providing a year-round aquatics complex. That's been on our major projects list for many months now. But with a business and operations plan, because those are expensive to operate. And lastly, providing more water play features citywide. We could have splash pads or spray play or interactive features at all kinds of locations. And we have the one right out here, but that's really our only one. And we think there's desire for that. And some photos of aquatics. Now, diversifying play experiences and having extraordinary play. Actions here are play for all age groups, and another bullet action item about universally accessible destination play area. Provide it could be one or more, and we'll rephrase that as all-inclusive. Now that Corbin has given us a lesson on that. That was the intention of that action item. And the third action item reflects what we just heard from you. Provide inclusive elements at all of our play areas over time. And especially when you build new or remodel, that's an obvious opportunity, but we want all of our play areas to have some amount of inclusive elements. Consider all users, all ages, all backgrounds, needs, and abilities when developing rec programming. We'd like to have an adventure playground and or a true nature play area in our town. Those are different things, but those would be a great thing to offer. We're also have an action about unique destination play areas and community parks to make them more unique so that people have a reason to go to one park versus another. Temporary programs and amenities can occur at different locations, and unstructured and varied play opportunities, not just cookie cutter play structures that you can get right out of a catalog. So there's the detailed language on that one. This one is about field sports. Objective 4E is to improve how they function and how usable our fields are. They get a lot of use. They are in high demand. They are well loved. These actions include having multi-use sports fields, having at least one cricket multi-use field, investing in our softball and baseball fields for more playtime and more use, partnering with school districts, potentially expanding community use of school sport fields, considering whether it makes sense for us to have an artificial turf field. Not saying we should, but exploring that. Some of our sports teams would love to have one because you can play on them faster after it rains. You don't have to wait for the field to dry out. So those have their ups and downs, artificial fields. School districts have them, the high schools. We do not yet. So that's an explore kind of action. The next action is similar. Evaluate whether lighting any of our fields makes sense to extend the usage hour. Our only lighted field is the ball field at Memorial Park right now. And lastly, we think there are opportunities to manage our fields to optimize their use. They could be better used. And here's happy team sports players. You'll recall, you've seen the data. We have, over 3,600 youth soccer players as of our last full calendar year that we had data for. We have all kinds of other team sports going on, and we've got adult team sports, so over 5,000 participants in 2016. So that's an important user group for us. Okay, 4F. Okay, we're at our next to last objective here. This is creating variety and responding to diverse interests. There's 3 actions here, creating at least one special feature at each of our large neighborhood parks so that they're unique, and incorporating ideas that our community suggests for additional or new features when we renovate or build a park. And the 3rd action is kind of similar to that. It's having a process to collect and evaluate proposals for features in parks. If we invite them, then how do we incorporate them? How do we respond to that? So here's the detailed language on 4F that we won't read through. And just a reminder about the variety of recreational opportunities is that second line down. So that was one of our top 4 scoring items, that people are very interested in having varied recreation. Okay, we're on our last objective on this goal, and that's for it's a social-oriented objective. And this has actions about to sort of encourage social interaction, add a variety of seating options, create activity hubs, provide large and medium group picnic areas at different locations. Some can be drop-in, some can be reservable. Outdoor fitness hubs in parks. Restrooms in our higher use parks. And lastly, providing Wi-Fi. Our community loves its Wi-Fi. And outdoor working areas, because actually employees are daytime residents in this city, and so are our students. And they sometimes want to be outdoors and get some work done and have a place to do that. So we want to get people outdoors and into our parks, so we'd like to accommodate that. So we got through that one. Going strong.
You're doing amazing.
Yes, I'm going as, I can be a little bit more succinct here. Okay, this one is of high interest to your rec staff. This goal 5 is, we called it activity or activation, because this is about what we do. It's about events, gatherings, programs, and activities. And your rec staff, that's our wheelhouse. And we want to make sure that those things are for all people, all ages, all cultures, all abilities, and we serve wide interests. So we've got a lot of objectives under this goal because it's so important. So we'll launch into those. The first objective is to keep going with those events, fairs, and festivals. That was another top scoring thing in this town. People love our festivals. People come from all over to attend our festivals. It matters a lot to our residents. So the actions are to continue that. Don't give up on fairs and festivals. Keep them going. To make Memorial Park a better venue for fairs and festivals. There's a bunch of things it would benefit from that would make it a better host for those things. We also can do smaller things in our neighborhood parks, which we've just launched our neighborhood events program that are events on a small scale that attract those who can walk to them. We can do temporary, unique events, pop-up things, parklets. There's a lot of ideas we have there. We'd also like to expand what we do for our outdoor programming for things that support health, wellness, and fitness. You don't have to be inside a gymnasium to be doing things that help your health and fitness. There are so many things you can do outdoors, so we want to emphasize outdoor programming. And lastly is the action about events at new venues we haven't done before or that are underappreciated, underutilized. There's some very nice opportunities for us. So this slide you've seen before, it's about the estimates for the people who attended festivals and events. I believe this is for 2016. There were roughly 60,000 that we know of. There could have been more than that. And a reminder when we did the survey about what kinds of things our residents do and the folks that took the survey, what they participate in. If you look at the third and fifth lines, that cultural events, performing arts and concerts, attending those, and attending fairs and festivals, very, very high. Out of 50 things, those were the third and fifth top thing that our folks are doing. So we want to keep it up for them. Okay, that's the detailed language. We're going to skip right by. Now, this one is about our teens and youth and about supporting and empowering them. The actions here are to develop and program an activity center for teens, potentially as a partnership at a new or repurposed venue to keep that alive. And we've talked about partnering with the library, a school, a makerspace. There's different ways this could occur, but we know that our current teen center location is not where it should be. Now we're talking about kind of activities, more challenging and adventuring things for teens to do, more adventurous, more evening and nighttime options for our teens and youth, and then involving them in designing our parks and in planning events, connecting them to volunteer opportunities and internships. Super high interest in that, and our community has very high volunteerism. It's really impressive across all ages, and our youth and teens have interest in that also. Then we have an action to support all kinds of teen opportunities in various areas that we've heard they value from the survey that our Teen Commission did. Now we'd also like to think about events that put together fun and educational outcomes and social opportunities, such as our Hack Cupertino hackathon. Kind of combine those things. We can pursue more of those things. And lastly is stress reduction. Our teens are kind of overachievers. They're working hard, they're doing a lot of things, and we think that being mindful of helping them manage their stress, the stress in their lives, is an important consideration. Here's the detailed language on that one. Here's some kind of teen center and teen activity photos. Now we'll move on to adults and seniors and mature adults. This objective is about lifelong learning and recreation for our older adults. Actions here are to target different age groups and multi-generational activities, expand offerings for our seniors outside the senior center, not just there, not in a silo, but at other venues, other kinds of places, get seniors outdoors, increase the things we can offer for outdoor activities for seniors, increase fitness and sports opportunities for our seniors, target our young and active seniors, including what we offer at the sports center, and when resources are available and there's support, consider adding programming space and infrastructure to the senior center. Seniors are the fastest growing demographic in our community by considerable. Having senior-friendly athletic and fitness facilities, and considering rebranding our senior center as a multi-generational place. You can be 50 and join our senior center, which is fantastic. 50 sounds kind of young to some of us. But we can expand the hours and offerings, run it on nights and weekends, offer programs for a wider age range. So that's an action noted in this plan. Yeah, and this is a chart that shows you, this is from ABAG and from MTC themselves, showing that the senior population growth in the 30-year window that we're in is 140% for seniors 65 and over, whereas the overall population growth is only 33%. So it's more than quadruple. Seniors are just growing. Yes, we are. So photos of senior activities, And then there's the detailed language that goes with that one. Okay, now we're on to arts and culture, another great topic, increasing the programming and emphasizing collaboration. So some actions here is increasing arts and cultural programs, continue what we are doing and tailor, work with community groups and tailor these offerings for diverse interests and backgrounds. And now one is about kind of small-scale mini art things to bring more performing arts to more people and more places. It doesn't have to be a performance that takes months to rehearse. We can consider this kind of an approach. We also would like to incorporate artists and art into youth recreation programming. And there's an opportunity to maybe merge a makerspace or incubator hub with artsy interests. And the list of things below that action notes what some of those opportunities are. So here are some photos of some theater spaces, some photos of some kind of maker spaces, incubator spaces. I wish I had all that stuff at home. Okay, there's the detailed language about that one. Okay, now we're doing great. We're going strong on number 5 is environmental education and interpretation. So again, continue the programming we're doing at McClellan Ranch Preserve, providing community garden space at other locations, as we've mentioned previously. That's a high desire item. Partnering with schools to create outdoor education classrooms, and the action to provide some challenging nature-based activities, all kinds of things there that could be expanded or provided. And you'll recall when we did public input on programming desires, this was back when we were doing our intercept events, and then did the first community-wide survey. The one that came out number 1 was nature and environmental programs. So our community is really interested in that. Okay, now outdoor rec in neighborhood parks. Some actions on that is organized play opportunities, mixing fun and learning opportunities, and action item for outdoor exercise programs, including some free or low-cost ones or drop-in ones. Options for mobile or pop-up programs and movable facilities. And lastly, providing infrastructure at neighborhood parks when we're renovating them or building them that support neighborhood programming and neighborhood scale events. Because our parks don't have great infrastructure right now for those sorts of things. So here's the detailed language on that. On number 7, we can almost see the finish line on this one. Providing, that's about, this is kind of, it's about service enhancement and how we achieve that. So, and defining our service areas and managing them to address the range of things we do. So an action is to provide and enhance services in specific areas that came to you previously, and either add programs or support services by others in a couple of very specific areas, which came to you a couple of months back. Providing or continue to provide this list of services that are each deemed important, and then one that is kind of specific, and it's about improving our process for doing reservations. Which we'd like to making reservations easy, centralized, very simple and transparent to folks that want to make a reservation. Right now it's a bit siloed, and we're moving towards improving that, but we want to make that an action, a definite action. There's the detailed language on that one. Now we are at our next to last objective here. This is about management tools, data gathering, and about fees. These are bunched together. An action we are absolutely doing is implementing our new registration software. We are in the middle of that right now. And developing goals for fees and charges and being consistent about that. Looking at our park and facility rentals, can we expand the options for users and batch things by short, medium, long term? There's ways we can be more flexible in how we provide rentals. We'd like to have a way to evaluate our programs and forecast program demand, and track our participation, cost recovery, and satisfaction by program service area. We currently do it after a program occurs. We invite people to give us their feedback, but we'd like to be more organized in that, so it's a better management tool for us, so we can be responsive to our community. Here's an action that arises partly from input from you commissioners, is that we could consider requesting demographic and geographic data from our participants so that we can understand who is well-served versus who is underserved. So that is something we could start capturing. The next to last action is the resources to evaluate data, report findings, and develop recommendations so we can be wise about our offerings. And lastly, a periodic program review and analysis so we can maintain quality and be responsive and be relevant. Okay, here's our last one, our last objective on this one. And this is really kind of procedural, and it relates a little bit more about how we do what we do with staff and how we communicate and roles and responsibilities so we can provide top quality. So the first action is about training, professional development, mentorship to keep us on our game and current. Another one is kind of a policy and procedure action. There's a little more text about that. I'll skip. We also are putting as an action having a lead coordinator appointed for each of our primary partners, volunteers, and contract providers so we can improve our relationships and communication. Continue to pursue partnership options, with a range of important rec providers. And this next to last action I really like. We've heard from folks they'd like more drop-in programs, they'd like more flexible programs, short duration things. Instead of having a program that meets 3 hours every Tuesday and Thursday for 12 weeks, our residents are busy. They have busy lives, and having a lot more short-term or drop-in or short duration things would appeal to them. So we have made that an action to pursue. And lastly is a mechanism to invite and evaluate community suggestions for new things we could offer. We think our community is fantastic. They have great ideas, and we'd like to have a way to not just be random about it, but to be able to respond to the great ideas we hear in a more organized way. You did it? Okay. Got through. But there's two more. I'm very sorry. There's two more goals. One is about yeah. So I know your ears are tired. Okay, quality. This goal is all about quality, our goal number 6. And first objective is about high quality, high functioning parks and spaces. Actions here are guidelines and maintenance standards, balancing custom things with our maintenance needs. We don't want to drive our public works staff crazy and give them things that they really can't take care of for us, involve them in our planning and decision making. We also want our spaces and facilities to be flexible and adaptable and multi-use. Needs change over time. A quality item, this is kind of a detail, but designing our things so that parents, guardians, and caretakers can watch over their children easily and effectively. Kids are fast, and you blink and they move swiftly, so we want our design to be smart. We want to make sure we coordinate with county fire and county sheriff and absolutely get their input on every park and facility we design so that they're safe and that they can take care of us and ensure our public safety. We want to have the right kind of support amenities. We have an action about consistent signage, and then one that's about natural lighting, acoustics, energy, resource efficiency, and that relates to the quality of what we do. So here's the detailed language, lots of detailed language on this one that we will blast through. The next one is about Cupertino being unique, about celebrating our identity and using what designers call placemaking when we design or renovate our facilities. So this one, the actions here are involving our neighbors and stakeholders when we design and develop things, add elements that reflect our unique town, our interests, our unique community, integrating art and unique elements into our system and varying the design so things are not cookie cutter. We can highlight our natural features and protect our historic buildings and historic resources. Those also help emphasize our unique identity. Providing interpretive elements that educate our visitors about our history, our cultural diversity and nature is another way to celebrate our identity. Now this one is a detailed slide, so I'll skip that. And then now we're on to guidelines and what we call BMPs, best management practices for park design and development. These are some kind of specific things. There are actions here about permeable surfacing, using local and recycled materials, using green building design, and one about parking. If we think we need more parking, don't just go pave our green space. Look at, are there other solutions? Can we go underground, above ground? Can we use the parking lot next door? Can we have a shuttle? We don't just have to provide at-grade paved parking. So that action item is about thinking that through. There's one about being water-wise for our irrigation, and another about being water-wise for splash pads and water play. So there's the details on that one. And there's some more specific ideas on this for water-efficient features, using gray water, continuing our recycling and composting, having recycling programs in all parks, and continuing what we do, composting tree limbs and organic material, using tree branches as mulch. A lot of details here. Continuing our outstanding, what they call IPM, Integrated Pest Management Program. They've done just a fantastic job of reducing use of pesticides, herbicides, toxics, and chemicals. They are terrific, and people don't hear about them much, but we've got a great team. We want to continue that. We think what they're doing is important. And then emphasizing clean, renewable, and efficient energy sources. So we'll skip the detailed language on that. Now this is the last objective here on our next to last goal. That's hospitality and comfort, so our users have a better experience, enhancing support amenities, having great restrooms, and having them at our high-use sites, providing social spaces and activity hubs and parks, providing shade, providing places to relax that are inviting. And here we are at charging stations and plugs at our gathering areas where demand exists. So we were reading your mind, we hope. So we think that's important too. It's an action in this plan. There's the details. Okay, we're on our last goal. Last one, finally. Okay, this one is about sustainability. So some of it's, I'll just launch right into it. We want to be good stewards and manage and maintain our whole Parks and Rec system and operate our programs and services by good management, wise stewardship, sustainable choices, and being smart about how we use resources. So objective number one is leveraging our resources and diversifying funding, because things take money to build and operate for our Parks and Rec system. So the actions here, one is to be financially prudent. That's inarguable. Also looking at making sure we've got the resources in rec and in public works in particular to support land acquisition, facilities, maintenance, recreation activities, and the arts. That if we want to expand things, we need the resources to do that. Develop a fee philosophy and cost recovery goals. And this one is kind of a nice action. It's an idea. Explore adding a facility use fee. Could provide dedicated funding for maintenance, renovation, or facility replacement. We don't have that, but that's something that we could do, so that could be looked into. We think that having an action to pursue grant writing, grant management, sponsorships, and donations is a way to invite other people to partner with us and help pay to build and operate things. So if we have the resources to do that, that could be a great way to achieve leverage, a lot of bang for the buck. Diversify funding sources for what we do. Evaluate options for an impact fee method. That's another way to support park and recreation facilities and developing trails and operating our system. Lastly is collaboration. Collaboration is a way to leverage. Detailed language here. Okay, we are on number 2. We just have a couple more to go. This is sustainable stewardship to maintain high quality. Actions here are that our consultant team tells us our parks are maintained at a higher quality level than most places they go. So we want to be on record that we need to keep that up. And the next action is to make sure we've got funding to run any new parks or facilities before we build them. So we need to look at the operating and maintenance costs and have a policy about that. Next action is to have a sinking fund or a funding strategy to do that long laundry list of stuff that Public Works is going to come up with, all those roofs and HVAC systems we need, and infrastructure. Another is to where we increase programming or we increase activities, we need to increase the maintenance and be prepared for that. We have an action to invest funding to be more active and better stewards of our natural resources and our cultural and historic and natural resources in our park system, to do a strong job on that, to look for efficiencies, use native and climate appropriate plants, invest in conservation practices and technology. Most of those things pay for themselves swiftly, and to look for solar-powered options in new and renovated facilities. Okay, detailed language there. We are on, I think we just got, so there's a lot of detailed language that we just blasted through. Look at that. Okay, I think we just got 2 or 3 left, home stretch. This is about the providing information and communicating with our users. And making sure that they know what they have access to and how to do outreach. An action is to refresh our identity, make sure we regularly update the website, make sure we are doing a good job having access to mailing lists for people that want to be automatically informed about any category of things that we're offering. Providing easy-to-find schedules and calendars of the wide range of things we do, providing information about resources that are out there, transportation assistance, connections to social services, and other resources that our community provides but maybe the city doesn't. That's part of what we can deliver. Here's an action about multiple languages and communication support in multiple languages, and making sure we stay current about providing information in different languages as needed by our community. We want to make it easier to register for programs, reserve parks and facilities online, at home, at any hour, and maintain the ability to report. If someone sees something they think is wrong or needs fixing, make it easy to report that. We already have the current Cupertino 311 app. So if that goes away, make sure we replace it with something just as easy. So it's simple for people to get the word to us so we can respond. The last one is about customer service training and cultural diversity training, so we can be good staff and responsive to our community. So here's the detailed language about all those things. Here's our next to last one, and then I get to rest my voice. So our next to last objective is about data and measurement, and this commission has supported collecting more information instead of just so we can make wiser, informed choices. So the actions here are to collect and evaluate data and produce an annual report, to track and measure our services, to continue our feedback surveys, and to invite ideas, and then to do about a kind of bigger community-wide organized survey, maybe every 5 years, probably doesn't need to be biannual, but periodically to make sure we're staying abreast about priorities and needs of our community. And the last one is about our GIS data for parks and facilities. Our GIS system is good, but there are things we can add to it to make it yet more useful for recreation planning and our long-range planning. So there's the detailed language there, and believe it or not, we're at our last thing on sustainability, and that is how we can strengthen our offerings and widen participation and take advantage of opportunities through collaboration. So this is the last set of actions. Once again, coordinating with our school districts to actively pursue joint use co-development opportunities. We got an idea about that yesterday. Enhancing programs through partnerships with other agencies and nonprofits, so being a little more creative there. Working with local nonprofits and local service organizations more actively when their missions align with some of the kinds of things we're trying to do, or we can support each other. Partnering with the business community more actively, establishing partnerships with non-traditional partners, and there's lots more detailed language about each of these in what you already read. Identifying equity partners to help us build or operate some of these facilities we're envisioning. Partnerships with private developers that are providing common open space to make them publicly accessible. We want to push for that. Volunteer opportunities, joint opportunities with other jurisdictions such as the county or Mid-Penn Regional Open Space District to help deliver our goals. And then continuing efforts to invite business partnerships and sponsorships when we have shared goals. And here's the detailed language, and we have completed all 19 pages of single-spaced bullets. Thank you. Sorry that took so long.
No, thank you very, very much. This was an incredible, comprehensive presentation of everything that we have talked about. It probably more.
Oh, we've been listening carefully,
and it's very apparent, and also getting access to all the information in advance so we could do our prep reading. But the way that you formatted this, where you had the summary, the action items, and then options to see the detailed, extremely helpful. I think made this whole process go a lot faster. So
yeah, it wasn't very fast, but at least it collapsed a little bit.
It did quite a bit. So I after reading the document, I was like, okay, this is going to be a long one, but you did an excellent job. So thank you very much.
If we beat midnight, then we're doing pretty well.
All right. I know the commissioners are going to have several questions and comments, but unless this is explicitly clarifying and not a comment on anything, I would love to give an opportunity to our residents who are in the audience.
Yes.
Excellent. Let's go ahead and have Connie Cunningham come on up.
Good evening, Chair, other commissioners, and my name is Connie Cunningham. I'm a 31-year resident here in Cupertino, very interested in the Parks and Rec Department. I wanted to thank you as well for your presentation. This is a huge responsibility and a very important one in our city. I guess one of the first things I wanted to say, I guess just as an aside, the neighborhood events this year, I thought that was a great idea. Really have enjoyed it. Been to the Bollywood one at Jollyman. Whoever's idea that was, I like that very much.
I'm not sure, but thank you so much.
You're welcome. So I noted that one of your first questions was, were any of these in priority order? And you had mentioned that they were not. And so I guess I wanted to give you what I think my priority is and what they would be. I think number one is conservation, which is right up there. That's perfect. But in number two place, I would put equitable access. I think one of the most absolutely critically important things that the Parks Department needs to focus on is the equitable access to meet that goal of 3 acres per 1,000 residents, whatever it is. I've been involved very much with the Valco process, and keeping open space as a critical piece of that has been really difficult because there are just so many competing interests. And so constantly going after that, the Opticos plan, the last one I saw was 5 to 6 acres, and they're going to have like 2,400 to maybe 3,000 units. So very important that we stay on that. And I'm not sure how your commission feeds into that, but absolutely stay on top of that. I know that there, for instance, we have on the east area, that's the east side of Cupertino, there's a new park, Lawrence Expressway. I don't know if it comes anywhere near to getting to what you're talking about, the 3 acres per 1,000. So that's something I think, rather than putting it third or fourth or any place down, it should be right up top, right what you're looking for, right after conservation. The fourth one, no, that was number 2. The third one, the connection, and I see there's an overlap with your bike commission, but in any case, all very good. I would take your maintenance and put it up fourth, because with all of the things that you've got going, this is huge. All the things that you've got going, I can see where you could easily get enthusiasm going everywhere and absolutely overwhelm your maintenance department. So I would think put that up there, or at least spread it throughout through other activities. Otherwise, I guess that's pretty much it. Oh, I do like Cupertino 311. Okay. We have turned in different items, and it works very well. So thank you for this opportunity to give my opinion. I really do appreciate everything that you do for our city.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Wonderful. Next up, we have Kitty Moore. And again, if anyone in the audience would like to make a comment, because you will not be able to once we go into discussion, please fill out a blue form. Go ahead.
Okay, I think that you are given a really huge challenge, and it's not of your making. It has to do with how the city was originally planned and the parks were doled out. And unfortunately, so I have a concern now that most of the city leadership on City Council lives on the west side of Cupertino, and I believe also the Parks and Recreation Commission. And you're generating a master development plan which does not equitably distribute the city funds and the future parkland improvements. And I think that that's going to be a huge challenge. Additionally, the bulk, of the parks are sitting on the west side, and the metric is 3 acres per 1,000 square feet. And the proximity to the park, how close is a park to your home? And I think that there needs to be an equity metric change. And I was reading a Policy Link article today, and it was saying inequity to access to parks is a major problem in many urban areas. Rather than looking only at the overall acreage of open space per 1,000 residents, a commonly used metric that masks inequalities in access to open space across a city or community, some cities are developing alternate measures that focus on the distribution of open space throughout the city. And I think that, I'll just go away from my notes. Well, no, they're good. The bulk of the new residential housing and office development at Apple Park, Main Street, Valco, Hamptons, 19800 Wolf Road highlights the high density and park-starved eastern Cupertino. And who is looking out for these residents? We need to use the neighborhood maps to show how few residents live next to the largest parks and open space areas on the west side of Cupertino, while the metric of showing the proximity to parks on the east side doesn't reflect the high relative density of the residents next to the parks on the east side, coupled with the fact that the fields on the east are permitted to regionally drawing soccer players because about 10 years ago, Cupertino stopped requiring 50% residency on the fields. Creekside's had about half of the park fenced off also during the rainy season, so we can't even use that area. So while the density increases on the east side, the parks have not kept up. And the officials living far from these areas have not remedied this while planning to upgrade their neighborhood areas, unfortunately. Buying land or having it donated on the west side also does not remedy this situation. Valco SB 35 requires 21.2 acres of actual parkland. Taking an in lieu of fee should absolutely not happen in the east of Cupertino due to the scarcity of land. And one quick note on lighted fields and turf fields, they were looking at it, the soccer league, several years ago, and they wanted to stick it next to the apartments because they knew that the apartment dwellers would not come vote and speak at council. Thanks.
Wonderful, thank you. Are there any more blue cards?
No. Me. It's in there.
Come on up.
Come on up. Come on down. Hi, thanks. So Kitty made some great points, Connie as well. I think the priorities are pretty right on that Connie listed, or at least close to what I would say if I was tasked with prioritizing. I just want, this is sort of a history thing, because I don't know if any of you know this. And it came up because you were talking about acquiring more land when possible, and also the very important collaboration with fire and sheriff, public safety. So when Creekside Park was planned and developed, which, 25 years ago? Do we know? Something like that? There was language written in, and it's since been lost, I believe, that as the strip of homes on Miller became available for sale, the city would do everything they could to purchase it, to open that whole face of Creekside up. And it was driven by safety concerns that that big area behind homes would not be accessible. That's partly why they designed the parking lot and the drive around that they did, so that police could the sheriff could go in and drive around and try to get eyes on everything. And there have been, in that 25 years, at least 3 opportunities that I know of, and some of them within the last couple of years, to purchase some of those homes. They've been on the market, could have been purchased, but no one, either people don't know about it because it was so long ago, or chose not to. And honestly, I don't know if it's the best use of money, the way real estate prices are, but I'm concerned that it's been forgotten. And when you mention, you want to work really collaboratively with our public servants in the safety realm, that happened back then, but the follow through didn't exist. So just something to think about. And don't quote me on any of it, but it's somewhere over there. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional blue cards? Right, doesn't look like it. So, commissioners, I know we all have things on our list to discuss. I would like to make the recommendation that we just go through in the order that we were given each of these summary slides, talk through each point, conservation, connection, equitable access enhancement, activity, quality, sustainability, in that order. Sound good? Excellent. You don't have to. Okay, so let's start with the conservation bullet. I'm using my packet as a reference point. The question and discussions for today are: do the objectives and actions provide a good meaning of implementing the master plan goals in years to come? And should any objectives or actions be added or revised? So, number 4, page 4, excuse me, conservation. Feedback on 1A.
Okay.
Excellent. 1B? Okay. If you guys want to just go one by one, that's fine. Go ahead.
I mean, I feel like this seems like it is, after a whole year of discussion, it felt like this all was included through our meetings, nothing was left out, majority of it is, I mean, if it's left out, I don't remember now.
Great, then why don't we change it
strive
up?
for that.
Instead of going bullet by bullet, we'll go person by person.
So I'll be quick. So, yeah, I was waiting for you to talk about historical preservation, and you finally did. So that was the thing I was waiting for, to keep that in mind, to protect historic buildings, and then also the historic interpretive signage. You know, whether the historic building still exists or it doesn't exist, it would be nice to see historic signage. So you did cover that. So you kept the only, this is nitpicky, I know, but you kept saying water fountains. I'd like to see water stations
Yes, okay.
in there. And I think you did cover bike parking. And then the only other thing really, there were dogs mentioned, but kind of vaguely. So I don't know if dog parks or off-leash hours can be incorporated somehow. And I know we're already doing it like a pilot program. So anyway, just that was my other comment. But other than that, incredibly comprehensive. I mean, just it's mind-blowing, really.
Yeah, mind-numbing, I think. But
okay, that's it.
Commissioner, may I inquire? Can you tell me what you would like said about dogs or dog parks or off-leash dogs areas? Do you wish to have an action about expanding opportunities for people to be outdoors with their dogs, or something of that sort?
Yes.
So we have the one dog park on Mary Avenue.
I would, I'd like to see more of the pilot. I guess there is discussion of a pilot program with off-leash hours, and depending on how that goes, maybe to be able to expand that to other areas in the city.
Okay, so to explore an off-leash dog area like other cities have done.
Right.
That would be the action you would prefer.
For me, yes.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to go next because mine's also very short. So I've been at this like 4 years. And so this is really comprehensive. We've read tons of this stuff, looked at 1 million maps, talked to thousands of people, and I don't know nothing's missing that I can think of. So thank you very much, because actually someone said this is very complicated, and it has been. So this is really an amazing conglomeration of all those things we've been doing. So I had 3 things actually, and one was the dogs. So she's already said that. Other cities have put off-leash hours on different parts of town. I know the dog parks is sort of in center, but John and people have asked. So the people on the east side maybe could probably use also a dedicated park for some off-leash hours. So maybe looking at also doing that around the city. And then the next thing was, my big thing was all the partnerships, which you very nicely put together, as making sure we work with our schools, our other towns, and our regional resources. We're lucky enough to live in this place with fabulous other regional resources, so we should make sure we make use of that. So that I was going to bring that up, but then you had a whole 10 pages on that, so thank you. Missing not many things. I'm not sure even how we're going to get this down to our parks, but it's really, really comprehensive. Thank you.
Okay, I was just wondering if was some way to have a glossary or a listing of where all of these actions will have intersections with other departments, other commissions. You mentioned them smattering throughout, but Public Works obviously is huge in all of this, and nothing can get done without them. So we have to just be hand in hand with them, and recreation services, but also our commissions, as we've been talking about, getting closer with the other commissions and making sure that we're collaborating with all of them on all of everything that we're doing, especially where there's intersection. And there's so many things that go all over the place. And so I don't know if there's a way to have a listing in like a table somewhere to focus it so that it's, because there's so much in all of these pages and language. Does that make any sense?
Like cross-referencing, maybe?
Yeah.
I was more also like, is there a point person who keeps track of the collaborations that we need with all the other departments, commission, that they are involved in the planning process when that particular area is focused during the master plan? Like there's a bike path, there's public works,
right?
There's
fine arts, there's sustainability.
Yeah, sustainability. So is there, I mean, somebody has to keep an eye on that those people, that commission or that department is in constant update or involved or talked about with before those features are, so I don't know. Who
That's a good comment. Yeah,
Staff
to organize this or tag it or flag it in a way that people can kind of go right to the things that would involve others. And what you've seen has been reviewed by planning staff, by public works staff, senior staff, in fact, and by sustainability staff and by our stormwater management staff, and it's been aired internally before it got to you, so that we didn't put actions in that were unmanageable for our colleagues in other departments. But in terms of also looking forward about implementing these things and about collaborating with other commissions, that's a good comment. So I'll talk with the consultant team about how to implement that suggestion.
Okay, yeah, I mean, in the thick of it, you don't want to hear after half of the process is gone that, we forgot to include or CC them into this detail. You know?
Yeah, because there's things the Fine Arts Commission will be interested in, and this will be aired informally or formally with the various commissions that are involved, and there will be an important planning commission meeting on this, among other things. But thanks for thinking of your colleagues.
It's been kind of a hot topic. I thought I had you, because I wrote down, I mean, we were almost through everything. and I got to, continuous improvement through surveys and feedback loop. And then you got to it. And I was like, darn, I thought it was going to have some value add here. And she had it in there. So thank you for having that. I think, even though it's way at the end, it's important because our standards change over time too, and this is a long-range plan, and we need to get that continuous feedback from the community of what's working and what's not working. And just because we implemented something, I mean, if it's a big dollar thing, we're not going to go change it, but the programs need to continually be refreshed and brought up with new, whatever the new technology is that people are interested in and things like that. So I was happy to see that there, even though my point was already covered.
I already said that most of it, everything is covered that we have discussed, and in the MP2, I was looking at some of the, there was a trail system talk, and it mostly talks about the central Cupertino corridor, and in the examples or in suggestions, good God, I said MP2 on my note. It talks about, say, on the page 12, 2B, it talks about Mary Avenue, Stevens Creek, Memorial Park, De Anza College, Unipero Serra. That's all, it's that central, but not on the outer part of the Cupertino, like around east and west. So the kind of loop. So I hope those are not forgotten.
We can be more explicit about those. This particular one was giving some examples of what the trail at Mary Avenue Bridge, the Don Burnett Bridge, could be extended southward, potentially to Stevens Creek Boulevard. We were floating some ideas, but we could be explicit about promoting the extension of the Saratoga Creek Trail northward towards Stevens Creek Boulevard through that Lawrence Mitty parcel, whether whoever owns it, it's in the county-wide trail plan, so it's already in a plan, but we can be explicit that we want to support that goal and be explicit about things more east and in more locations. We were giving samples, but I'd be happy to add that.
Okay. In the teen section, there was talk about the cafe-style activity centers. And I've asked this before in one of our meetings. There are some of the businesses which are closed and, they have not been in business for a long time, and the empty places. Is there a way to acquire them and repurpose them for such activities?
Potentially.
With money, of course. I mean, if we are talking about buying properties to build houses, so is there a zoning issue? Is there a,
Well, in my experience, one of the challenges with purchasing facilities that aren't built as recreation facilities is the enhanced cost and to operate and maintain them. But in our city, with such a limited amount of opportunity to purchase property, I think that's a great idea. We need to be on the lookout to be creative, be unique with it. So, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll just add that the wording on that about a new activity center for teens, cafe style, because if you're a teen, you're hungry constantly. And the wording did say, besides partnerships, at a new or repurposed venue, and in terms of repurposed, that would fit very well with your idea of if something at a suitable location becomes available that's vacant. Teens are particularly geography sensitive, since they're walking, a lot of them are walking and bicycling most of the places they go. And if it's in proximity to where they already are or need to be. So that would fit very nicely with your suggestion.
Okay. And then the school collaborations with the art and culture programming. Is that, I know there's been mentioned that to emphasize more work with the school districts. Is that something that, like, I know CUSD, there is talks about, doing joint use facility, but are other schools which are part of Cupertino, but some of they are in like Sunnyvale, San Jose. Is that still like collaboration with those schools, like the district FEHSD, which has a much wider attendance area, collaborating with those? Is that a possibility, or because then the other city park and recs come into play probably?
Yeah, and to that extent, our school districts cross city limit lines all the time, and in our current joint use agreement with Cupertino Union School District is just for our maintenance of the sport fields, and then we handle reservations and use during non-school hours. But there are opportunities, as we flagged here throughout, to expand what we do with more schools and with the high school district, and potentially with schools that are perhaps in one of those school districts but are, heaven forbid, across our city limit line. Some of our kids cross our city line to go to the school that's nearest to them, so that maybe we should be more explicit about that, but we were talking about pursuing things we haven't pursued, and that's in that category.
Okay, thank you.
Just to keep it interesting. Not quite item by item. You mentioned briefly gray water systems. It would actually be great to see all water that's used to irrigate. Thank you. I was really missing that word. Irrigate any park area with gray water. There's no reason we should be using any kind of potable water for that. Good. here, I know we talked about all-inclusive versus universal designed access. That bullet point on page 18 at the bottom, MP3-3C, the bottom one, I like universal only because I think it also includes age as well. Although all abilities technically does, I feel like universal is a more appropriate term. You had mentioned we might change that. I think for the play structure that's relevant. I think for the general, for the specific equitable access portion, we should keep that as universal. In MP4, number D, you said diversified play experiences. I'm being too picky, that's fine. Okay, this is one thing that I had mentioned before, is MP4 4A. Reinvestment is needed in existing rec facilities, gray spaces. So one of the consultants had talked about that, and that really stuck in my head, making sure that we're not designing parks in a way that can't be modulated in 20 years, because we don't know what technology can do in 20 years, and I do think that needs to be included. We're putting a lot of money behind the all-inclusive playground. It's really not going to move, but if we do that with every park, it's going to limit what we can do in 20 years, or in 10. So it'll be good to have that kind of flexibility. It was buried in 4F, but I wanted to bring it up in 4E. Well, I get that's it's fields. Sorry, for the beginning of 4F. No, I guess it's just detailed. That's fine. But basketball courts. That's been like a huge thing, and I feel like it's really buried in 4F as one of the bullet points. And I think that's been a very prominent feedback point I've gotten from a lot of people, especially like my age demographic has been like, we need basketball courts. And I know that the department's aware of that, but I didn't.
Okay, that can be a more explicit action.
Excellent. Completely support rebranding the senior center. I had a couple more. MP5 5H, consider requesting demographic and geographic data. That's too soft of a language for me. If it's coming from us, we can of course give the option to our residents to not respond. That's their choice, but it should be on every. Anything that we ask is an ethnic demographic question and an age demographic question. Eventually we'll get to gender, but I think we're not quite there yet. But I would really like to see that worded much strongly. Or instead of requiring demographic and geographic data, or specifically demographic if you need to split those two up. Fine.
Yeah, we thought you would like that one.
I did, quite a bit. I was like, I know she put that in because I've been harassing her about it for 5 years. If possible, gaining access to new residents. Sorry, MP5 5I, last bullet point. It's develop an outreach mechanism to solicit and evaluate community suggestions for new programs, activities, offerings. If there's a way that we can connect directly with any new resident of Cupertino, giving them offerings, even if that's a video from our Parks and Rec department saying this is what happens in our city. When I did that Facebook post last month, I realized that people just don't know all the things that our city is doing, and we're doing a lot. So finding a way to get that in with people at the beginning.
Can I add that we should also use the word existing services that we provide, suggestion of feedback. So it says solicit and evaluate community suggestions for new programs, but is there the existing programs also should have a...
You're on 5, excuse me, you're on 5I?
5I, yeah.
Okay.
5I, yeah. In the summary, last bullet, the solicit, evaluate.
Oh, gotcha, okay, yep.
So it should have existing.
For new program, existing and new. Okay, gotcha. That makes sense.
MP6 6A, page 36, it says designed to allow staff and parents to watch over children. As we've discussed, our population is also aging, and a couple weeks ago, there was a silver alert that happened at a Target. So I don't know if there's specific practices that our Age-Friendly Cities organization might be able to give us. But if they have any kind of specific generalized things like, hey, this is typically how you respond to a silver alert, because we have an aging population, it might be good to also take that into consideration in addition to watching over kids. MP66C, consider permeable surfaces for new play trails. Many developers don't use the most modern tech in terms of composites. So it'd be great to find a way, maybe a new bullet point here is independently trying to identify, like our department trying to identify, or sustainability, trying to identify new technologies and materials to be using. I know that there's a lot coming out that hasn't necessarily reached to the average developer. And so just making sure that we're using that.
And are you suggesting that in regard to paving materials, or kind of generally?
Generally, I specifically know of a company that's basically that takes plastic, melts it down, and makes it into tar, but it's all recycled, sustainable, and lasts an average of 7 years longer than the current tar paving material that's used.
Okay.
So that's a specific example,
Okay.
but in general.
Okay.
I think that might be it. I hope that's it. No. Refresh the department's identity. I know that the city has specific guidelines that they enjoy operating on, but if we believe that that is hindering our ability to access and reach out to residents because we have to follow a format that's similar to 1990s websites, if you need our support to do what we need to do to revamp that in a way that looks like it's at least 2000s, let us know. And that is like so not you guys, so that's fine. And then the final thing, I think, I can say yes, the final thing, is MP7D on page 43. You say track and measure services, evaluate data and participation. When we do track and measuring services, what it would be great to see attached to that is a contrast to the demographic breakdown of the city from census data. So we look at all the services and things that we offer, who we're serving and how that contrasts, and where there's a gap between who actually lives here and who we're actually serving. And I would like to ensure that instead of using phrases like citizens, we say residents going forward pretty much throughout any of our data and any of our data collection methods. Great, I'm done. I tried to power through that as fast as possible. Excellent. Anyone else? I'm guessing not, because y'all are giving me the evil eye. Okay, thank you very much. That was incredible.
Thank you, commissioners. I know that was a long slog. You were amazing.
Wonderful. Okay, now moving on to the work plan for the 2018-2019 year. As a reminder to folks in the audience, this comes up every commission meeting, so if we do want to add something, we can. Coming up for our next meeting is the Bike Ped Commission presentation, Hall Road Trail donation and improvements, Jollyman Dog Park item, citywide parks and recreation system master plan implementation framework. We got another hefty meeting today. So, no changes? No changes for the October meeting? All right, we are good on that agenda item. Director's report.
Okay, good. Gail had what? I don't know, 37 pages. I'll keep mine to 44. No. I have some comments and some kind of exciting news. First, I feel compelled to kind of give you a very quick overview on how what Gail presented tonight is going to become actual brick and mortar things, how the process works. We will carve up together and kind of slice and dice the different goals and action items. There are some that'll be very opportunistic, that, you know, meaning that there's an opportunity to do something. There'll be lower hanging fruit, and then there'll be more difficult things that we'll work on. But they'll hit what we'll call our probably 3 to 5 year, but again, that'll be discussed, strategic plan. And once we publish, and we'll come to you as literally the approving authority for that plan, we'll go from there and pluck those things out of the strategic plan that we want to include in the council-approved work plan. And the reason that that's important is because that is what we as staff use to move items into the budget process. So you can see how we go from priorities in this plan. We say we're going to tackle a certain amount of them, and then they become things that we work with council to include in that approved plan. Then they become budgeted and approved. And then, to show you how it all wraps up together, then we check ourselves to make sure that we're doing things right by using the 151 standards from the accreditation process. So things like the marketing plan and are we achieving cost recovery and those kind of things that we have to work through as far as that process. From there, then we assign one individual staff and one champion. So there might be a champion manager or supervisor and another staff person to take on each of those items that are then in the strategic plan. So we work on those until we're ready and we say we've done what we can and we've succeeded and we celebrate, and then we go on and we do the whole thing all over again. Then it's time to pull out a new strategic plan. They may be in 3-year increments. We don't know. Those are for discussion. But that's the plan. That's how we get from A to Z, and try not to forget anything. But anyway, I have some fun things to share with you in addition to that. On Friday, July 20th, we held our 3rd toddler movie night. And I don't know if you've tracked that we've been doing these over at the community center. And it's really kind of neat because what we've been doing is building a sense of community by building our own patrons, literally growing our own folks from very, very young age. Really, really neat. We had 70 in attendance to watch Moana, and all the kids got Hawaiian leis, and it's just a really neat thing. So while we put a lot of energy into celebrating, say, the successes in the movies and the concerts at Memorial Park, for folks that are only that age, they're very young, they really don't, and I wonder whether we should too, stay up that late, to enjoy the movies, say, at Memorial Park or in the neighborhoods. There's something for them. Wanted to comment that ActiveNet is still on the way. We're still putting a lot of energy into this. We're not talking a lot about it. This is the automated registration system because we're online doing exactly what we needed to do. But recognize that among our supervisors that are involved in training themselves and train the trainer and training other people, this is taking approximately 40% of their time right now. So this is a significant undertaking. We're in the home stretch. We're looking at sometime in the fall here to actually go live with this system. And this system has some real opportunities. We can do some things that we aren't able to do now, such as request survey data when people register to figure out their demographics so we know as a check and balance what we're doing. Next, National Night Out is on August 7th. It's next Tuesday. This is something that we have offered in the past with a centralized kind of kickoff at Target. We won't be doing that centralized kickoff this year, although we expect to bring it back next year. But we went from 21 to 43 neighborhoods registered for this program. So 43 of our neighborhood groups, individuals are celebrating National Night Out this year, which I think is an amazing thing anytime you double what you've been doing. Neighborhood movies and concerts. You know, we have our full schedule through the end of September, and one of the items on there that is going well happens to be the events at Main Street Park. Remember when we opened that park, we had opportunity to program it. Well, this neighborhood program is how we've gotten there. And in fact, we have one on August 22nd. A little bit of a challenge because of the neighbors. We want to be respectful. We don't amplify sound. So this is an acoustic opportunity for concerts. The fitness programs in the parks are doing well. The Art in the Park event that we had, the last one, was we had 48 people come for a music in the park opportunity to teach children and families to spend time together. It was really a nice activity. One of the most highly anticipated events, and I know Judy knows about this, Commissioner Wilson knows about this, is a neighborhood event that we're going to focus on our own community and on chess, because it's very popular in our community. There will be a movie on August 25th at Creekside Park featuring the Disney movie The Queen of Katwa on the 510 square foot giant movie screen. And if you haven't seen the movie screen yet, we need to come up with a name for it. It's just big. The story was inspired by real-life chess champion Fiona Mutesi, if I'm pronouncing that right, and features another character named Benjamin Mukambi. I know I'm misspelling or mispronouncing that name. The reason I want to tell you about this, it's a very inspiring story, and it's going to make for a great event. The movie is around Fiona's life, and again, it's really neat. But Fiona and Benjamin will be at the movie at Creekside Park. So they're coming right off of the front page of the Disney movie, and that's going to be an opportunity. I've told the coordinators that I get to at least say checkmate to she is the Ugandan champion, as I understand it. Next, swimming lessons, another thing that kind of happens traditionally, but it's amazing, the energy and the effort that goes into doing this. We had 1,200 young people take swimming lessons this summer, and swimming lessons have concluded, but that's been absolutely amazing. We used every inch of space and time that we had from the school district, who we rent the Cupertino High School pool from. This week, we wrap up the tremendously popular, really high-quality Shakespeare in the Park. I will be there tomorrow night, and it's just really going well. And one little thing, as I've committed to let you know about how we're doing in recruitments, we're doing very well in terms of our staffing right now. We do have a part-time code enforcement officer position that we are recruiting for, and we hope to get that filled. That becomes very important when we get into the fall and the outdoor sports program. So that's my report for this time. Whew. And that's great.
Thank you so much, Jeff. That was also very comprehensive.
I'll make mine really short. I was at the mayor's meeting, but instead of telling you what everyone said around the table, because it's 11:15, I'll just say there's a new emphasis on commissions sharing information, attending each other's meetings, creating opportunities to work together. So it was enthusiastic. The city council meeting lasted till 1 in the morning or something. One of the big things that came out of it was commissions could, should, and will work more closely together, and everybody was very enthusiastic about that. And my only funny story about the mayor's meeting is the teen commission young man gave us all his 2 or 3 things coming up, but we're not invited. So all the discussion about how seniors and teens should work together and everything, yeah, it's for teens. Because we said, what's that date? We're all writing it down. He goes, oh, no, it's for teens. So they're very busy, but they don't really want us there. But anyway, and the Fine Arts Commission wanted to make a point that if we want art in our parks or painted murals or things like that as we open parks, they would be very, very happy to work with us on that kind of thing. And, John Key was excited about being involved in that. Yeah, and I've been to a few things. The Shakespeare in the Park was great. It was really well, the night I went was really well attended. It was a beautiful, typical beautiful Cupertino night. We were lucky to live here. That's all.
Okay, I also attended Midsummer at Shakespeare in the Park, and they also had a little reception right before on that particular night. Very well done. I mean, there were, all ages in the audience were enjoying it and laughing, and so it really appealed to a wide range. And sometimes you think Shakespeare may be a little highbrow. Well, the way they presented it was very enticing and inviting, so that was great. Neighborhood events, I think I've been the queen of neighborhood events. I've been going to a lot of them and have enjoyed them all. The Bollywood night at Jollyman was exceptionally well attended. Got to do the Bollywood dance as well as Bhangra. I was up there. Meenakshi was there with me.
I was watching her.
There were two at Monte Vista that I attended. The Chinese cultural event one, I felt was a little bit flat. I'm not sure why. There just weren't as many people. It seemed like it wasn't flowing as well as some of the other ones. So I don't know if it just wasn't clear where it was going. It was moving along. The Main Street Bluegrass that I attended was great. Again, the amplification thing is an issue there, and if we can figure that out, it would make it even better. So that's good. I also attended the Friends of Stevens Creek Trail, just celebrated their 25th year anniversary of being in existence. And they had a little barbecue down at Blackberry Farm. And so I attended that. And they have a really well-supported group of people that have helped them over the 25 years. And it's a regional group that Mountain View has most of the trail, and they were really the first to get in there. But people from Mountain View, Los Altos, Sunnyvale, Cupertino are all there working to figure out how to make this trail go end to end. So that was a good event.
All right. I also attended a lot of summer programs, neighborhood events. I started with the first one, the Lion King movie. That was very nice, and the music before that was awesome. And I hear they came again, that band came again to Main Street. The presence was a little small, being the first event, but there were people coming in and they realized, they were just walking the park and then they ended up staying to watch the performance or watch the movie. So that was really good. And the awareness was about the future parks, events was there because they could get the brochure. So that was a good start. I did so a Japanese delegation from the sister city was visiting. So we took them to that Bhangra workshop and they had a good time. The best was the cheese ball concert at the Memorial Park, and we had all the 35 delegates plus their hosting families attend that concert, and I think all of them were on the floor dancing, including the mayor, who was like 73 or 74-year-old. I mean, everybody was dancing throughout, so that was a blast for our visiting delegation. They enjoyed outdoor parks. In Japan, they can't do this because it's so sweaty and humid, and enjoy the outdoors. Attended the July 4th fireworks, great crowd. Shakespeare in the Park, attended the same day as you with the reception. The Sister City dedication ceremony at the City Hall right outside. That was a very well attended ceremony, and it was nice. There is a nice stone, if anybody wants to go check it out. It was a gift from Sister City. And then yesterday night watched the live discussion about the combined commission. But it went for a long time. One thing that I noticed that they said the mayor's meeting should now, they were recommending the staff to be there to have some minutes come out of it so that there is so that was a good thing. So if
that didn't happen yesterday.
Okay.
Maybe it will be happening.
Maybe it will happen, but yeah. So, and then I think there was a Zumba class today, which I missed because of this meeting. So hopefully to go for the future ones, and the yoga classes. So I'm looking forward to the yoga classes. All
Okay, I'll
that.
be very brief. Okay, yes, I went to the first neighborhood event, and Meenakshi was there, but I had to leave early and couldn't stay, so, and I really liked the free popcorn. I was also part of the Toyokawa hosting. I had 2 of the Toyokawa 11, so I had 2 city council members stay at my house over the weekend. I took the bike tour of Cupertino that was hosted by the Silicon Valley Bike Coalition to look at the biking infrastructure in the city, and that was on Friday the 20th. So that was incredibly informative, mostly public works people, and then also Shakespeare in the Park, and it was a great production. So that's it for me.
Excellent. So went to July 4th stuff, which was awesome. Last year I know it was regenerating, but beautifully executed. I think traffic was surprisingly easy to navigate, and the staff, really big kudos to the staff. It was pretty flawless. I came late to the Lion King thing, which is why, anyways. But that was great. I can literally watch that movie many times. And then I actually did reach out to some of the Parks and Rec commissioners in San Francisco to see if we can get a private tour, and they are, at least one person of the commissioners responded to me. So hopefully we will be able to get that tour of the rooftop in San Francisco set up when it's not the big one, although the big one is coming up on the 11th, if any of you have an interest to actually go. The last thing is that I asked Kevin to give me a editable version of the remaining events for this summer, but also anything we have coming up in the fall. It would be great for us to just list out, make sure all the groups are being reached by us. And so I'll send that around an email to you guys.
What groups?
It's just like a master list of all of the stuff that the department is touching. Everything from neighborhood events to community events to everything. So just to make sure that we're hitting everything we need to. Excellent. Since there's nothing else, I adjourn this meeting at 10:52. Well done, team.